In the middle of the spacious school courtyard, a magic circle glowed brilliantly as a clear announcement boomed through the loudspeaker that today was the day students would awaken their classes. Standing on the stage was a burly teacher with a rugged beard who shouted, "This is directly tied to your future destiny." It turned out to be the combat instructor, Lu Hu, who loudly encouraged them, hoping all the students would awaken their dream classes. Right at that moment, our cool male lead appeared, thinking to himself that after all these years of time traveling here, the day to awaken a class had finally arrived. He was Fang Zhou, a new student at Heicheng High School. Amidst the neatly lined-up crowd, upon hearing the teacher's loud call, Fang Zhou stepped forward and gave a firm, clear reply. The dashing young man stepped forward, the tails of his coat fluttering in a hopelessly handsome fashion. Seizing the moment, a few female students started whispering with blushing cheeks, wondering what class Fang Zhou might awaken. Judging by his vibe, she guessed he would be a priest. The group of girls eagerly chimed in that they thought so too since he looked that handsome, and it would be a total waste if he didn't become a priest. Overhearing this, the sour young men nearby immediately curled their lips, saying he was just a bit handsome, but in the end, an awakened person still had to rely on their class to speak, causing the girls to snap back fiercely that so what, they were just jealous of his looks. Ignoring the noisy crowd, Teacher Lu Hu flipped through the files and muttered his evaluation that Fang Zhou was the orphan of a martyr with excellent physical qualities and very good academic records. The teacher stroked his beard and smiled in appreciation, thinking no wonder he was drawing so much attention. As for Fang Zhou, he calmly reached out to touch the stone altar, triggering the magic circle to emit a dazzling golden light. A brilliant beam of light reflected in the young man's expectant eyes. Instantly, a gigantic, colorful pillar of light shot straight up into the sky, causing the entire school to gasp in shock at the overwhelmingly intense reaction. No way. Could the class he awakened be that defying of the heavens? Mixed in was a frantic fangirl scream declaring that he truly lived up to being Fang Zhou, the crush of her heart. But wait, suddenly an eerie, dark bluish-black demonic energy radiated from his hand. That gloomy energy gathered into a pitch-black bolt of lightning that struck the ground, dyeing a large expanse of the school courtyard in pitch black. Teacher Lu Hu jumped in shock, his eyes widening as he blurted out, "He actually triggered a natural phenomenon. Just what kind of terrifying class did this kid awaken?" The entire space suddenly projected illusions of countless demons, armored skeletons, and reapers holding scythes looming faintly within a chilling green mist. Standing before the formidable demon army with a gigantic skull king in the background, Fang Zhou kept an ice-cold, supremely badass expression. Amidst the swirling tempest of dark energy, the young man stood proudly and steadily atop the high platform. Finally, the system panel popped up with a notification of successful awakening. Necromancer class. Fang Zhou furrowed his brow and muttered Necromancer, staring fixedly at his hands radiating demonic chi and the shadowy phantom with glowing blue eyes behind his back as he wondered, "Is this really my class?" The male students pointed and laughed out loud, "Ha ha ha," causing Fang Zhou to turn his head in sheer bewilderment thinking, "Huh." The blonde ringleader laughed gloatingly and mocked that after making such a huge fuss, he ended up awakening as a necromancer, continuing triumphantly that while it was a rare class, it was the weakest stepping stone among all combat classes. A male student nearby joined in the mockery, laughing to death that class strength really had nothing to do with academic grades. Fang Zhou fell into deep thought, realizing that while the necromancer looked powerful, it had one fatal weakness. He muttered to himself that it required establishing a sufficiently close bond with the undead world. Fang Zhou continued to question himself as life and death were inherently opposing concepts, sighing internally that as a living human being made of flesh and blood, how could one possibly comprehend the world of the dead? Fang Zhou smiled with confident assurance, thinking to himself, however, that he was completely different. The system immediately displayed the personal attribute sheet. Name, Fang Zhou class, Necromancer rank, lower tier novice attributes, strength 1, constitution 1, agility 1, spirit 2. A vibrant green notification popped up congratulating the host on awakening the Undead Realm experience system. Fang Zhou smiled as he lifted the glowing green magic orb and muttered that his golden finger, which had been late for 18 years, had finally decided to show up. The system continuously displayed new notifications, stating that he had unlocked the system, which automatically connected to the Undead Realm for him, while also creating an Undead Realm avatar for him. The system displayed a detailed guide stating that the player could use the skeleton avatar to explore the Undead Realm, devour other undead creatures to level up and grow stronger, and could also summon the skeleton avatar into the real world, warning that this experience harbored unknown risks, so the host should proceed with caution. Fang Zhou stroked his chin smugly, thinking that an actual undead realm experience was practically a custom-designed system tailored specifically for a necromancer. He curved his lips slightly into a mysterious, confident smile toward the bright future ahead. He gave a decisive, straightforward command, summon. Then he gasped in surprise, realizing that this guy was actually his avatar in the undead realm, to which the system immediately offered the additional explanation that precisely before summoning this avatar, he could temporarily possess it to experience the undead realm. The system continued with a gloomy notification stating that the skeleton avatar could devour other undead creatures to boost its own attributes, and furthermore, defeated undead creatures could also be summoned by the host to fight in the real world. Fang Zhou grew excited, thinking that as long as he destroyed enough of them, wouldn't he have an endless supply of summons. Fang Zhou cast his gaze far across the desolate undead realm, and proudly declared that this entire undead realm would become his personal hunting ground. Fang Zhou shook his head slightly and muttered to himself that experiencing the undead realm could wait for later, immediately issuing the order for the system to summon the avatar into the real world right away. The system responded quickly that it was understood, and was immediately beginning to summon the skeleton avatar for him. A magic circle blazed brightly beneath his feet, as a gigantic skeleton avatar draped in gloomy black robes slowly and majestically stepped out. Fang Zhou mentally evaluated the towering entity beside him, realizing that the skeleton avatar could also be summoned directly into reality by him, making this his strongest summon. Teacher Lu Hu shouted loudly to call the next student. The next person, by Xia Olian, stepped out and looked toward Fang Zhou as the teacher secretly sighed with regret. Such a good sapling, why did he have to awaken this class? A few female classmates ran over and chattered consolingly, Fang Zhou, don't get discouraged. While another girl firmly asserted, that's right, even if he's a necromancer, I still believe he can achieve the legendary crown. The girl next to her stared at the skeleton in awe and said, by the way, is this skeleton summoned by you? It looks so cool. The blonde guy standing in the distance jealously muttered, damn it, why does someone who awakened such a trash class still have girls swarming around him? Thinking angrily if being handsome meant you could act however you wanted, before disdainfully reassuring himself that it was just summoning a dry skeleton, so how could it possibly be as strong as his assassin class? He hatched a malicious idea, figuring that since new necromancers were rumored to only be able to summon a few skeletons a year, if he smashed this skeleton to pieces, it would undoubtedly significantly drag down Fang Zhou's leveling speed. He then silently backed away, coldly drawing his weapon as he prepared to cast the Silent Needle skill to assassinate his target. He flicked his hand to shoot out a sharp, wind-piercing mini arrow that flew straight toward the skeleton with absolute decisiveness. In his heart, he screamed triumphantly, go to hell. Fang Zhou remained calmly with his eyes closed and motionless in the face of the enemy's sneak attack. The blonde guy's eyes widened in horror as he screamed. It disappeared. Before he could steady his wits, the skeleton's face with its glowing blue, gloomy eyes closed right in front of him, making him break out in a cold sweat of fear. Before the assassin could feel pleased, he was punched straight in the face by a bony hand with a force so brutal that it sent blood splashing everywhere. The avatar swung a spiked scepter violently, smashing it down so hard that the ambusher could only let out a screech before face-planting into the ground. Lying flat on the grass with a blood-stained face, he widened his eyes in terrified disbelief and stammered, how is this possible? Then he struggled to his feet with a trembling body. Fang Zhou leisurely strolled closer while the other guy clutched his swollen cheek, backed away in panic, and screamed, Fang Zhou, what do you want? The bitter blonde glared at his opponent while cold sweat poured down in confusion, thinking, damn it, why is his skeleton so powerful? It even managed to detect a blind spot sneak attack. But then he quickly regained his malicious expression, reassuring himself with a reckless thought that since Fang Zhou was just a necromancer, no matter how strong his summon was, his main body definitely couldn't be strong. Suddenly, the cornered guy bounced up like a spring. He ran forward like a madman to launch a direct ambush, screaming, go to hell. Yet the male lead remained completely calm, effortlessly reaching out to grab the incoming wrist in a tight grip. He squeezed so hard that the bones felt like they were about to shatter, causing the ambusher to let out a painful shriek. The young man glanced at the enemy with half-closed eyes of utter disdain and coldly dropped a single line. Overestimating yourself. Right after speaking, he channeled lightning energy into his fist and delivered an immensely powerful blow straight to the opponent's face without a shred of mercy. The thunderous punch sent the unlucky guy flying backward as his face scraped against the grass, leaving a long, tragic trail of blood. The crowd of students witnessing this dramatic turnaround could only drop their jaws in terror. Meanwhile, the guy who had aggressively demanded blood a moment earlier was now lying unconscious in a pool of blood, completely speechless. The nonchalant male lead turned around and led the skeleton away, dropping an indifferent and bland remark. Let's go. Behind him, the students started whispering animatedly. with someone curiously asking what was going on since it was so noisy. A quick-witted girl readily replied that Lu Renjia had just ambushed Fang Zhou and ended up getting taken down in the blink of an eye, while another person marveled that he was knocked out with a single punch, leaving a male student nearby scratching his head in bewilderment as he wondered weren't Necromancer main bodies supposed to be very weak. How could Lu Renjia not even beat him? The miserably defeated guy was helped up by two friends, wheezing with bitter hatred, Fang Zhou. He watched the retreating figure get further away and gritted his teeth as he roared vindictively. You just wait. In the blink of an eye, the school scenery appeared peaceful once again beneath the brilliant rays of the evening sun. The young man possessing the rare class had slipped into a secluded, deserted corner at this point, letting out a sigh of relief as he figured no one would bother him here anymore, and called out, "System, come out." The magic interface popped up immediately while he thought about going to experience the undead realm for a bit, as the system thoughtfully asked, "Does the host wish to open the undead realm experience?" The teenage boy began analyzing thoroughly, reasoning that experiencing the undead realm could help him understand this world better since it was a mandatory subject for necromancers. And if his luck was good, he could even devour other undead creatures, meaning there was no better way to boost his strength. But then he hesitated briefly, wondering if things could really go that smoothly. He continued weighing the accompanying risks, noting that undead creatures were extremely dangerous, and it was anyone's guess who would end up devouring whom, as risk and reward always coexisted before making a resolute decision. System, open the undead realm experience. The screen quickly flashed brightly in response. Understood, please wait a moment. Standing amidst the swirling demonic chi, the young man resolutely decided that since he had waited 18 years to get this system, how could he possibly waste such a huge opportunity to become strong? The final notification box appeared with a ready button to complete the process, stating that the Undead Realm experience carried an undetermined level of risk and asking if he still wanted to open the experience. Without a single trace of hesitation, his finger reached out to press the confirmation button. The magic circle exploded beneath his feet, accompanied by a fiery red exclamation mark icon, signaling that a deadly dangerous area was welcoming its visitor. The scenery instantly shifted into an extremely horrifying world featuring a blood-red swamp, piles of skulls, and a crow resting quietly on an ancient gravestone. The uninvited guest had now possessed his avatar, kneeling on one knee across the gloomy, desolate land beneath a blood moon while silently observing his surroundings. The skeleton raised its hand to look, staring intently as it thought to himself that it was identical to the skeleton he had summoned earlier, wondering if this was what the Undead Realm experience was like. At the same time, the system automatically updated. Skeleton avatar rank, lower tier novice attributes, strength, 1 constitution, 1 agility, 1 spirit, 1 equipment, none skills, skeletal armament, novice class, instinct. The instinct of the skeleton race allows them to utilize bones to strengthen themselves and craft equipment. Soul power, 0. The avatar touched its chin, pondering with curiosity. It comes with the skeletal armament skill. He continued piecing the clues together, figuring this must be the ability the avatar had just used earlier. Right after that, the skeleton turned and walked away, telling himself that for safety's sake, before running into enemies, crafting a weapon was the absolute priority, completely unaware that a gigantic dark shadow was quietly closing in from a blind spot. Suddenly, a sickening two-headed wolf bared its fangs and brandished its claws as it lunged out from the darkness, letting out a ferocious roar. The hunted target jumped in shock, hastily spinning around upon sensing the killing intent behind his back. The ferocious two-headed beast lunged down from midair in a flash, forcing the rookie to perform a messy, tumbling dodge. The skeleton retreated into a defensive stance, breaking into a cold sweat as he realized he was already being attacked right off the bat, confirming that the undead realm was indeed fraught with danger everywhere. The vicious beast didn't give its prey a chance to breathe, suddenly lunging forward to clamp down tightly on his bony leg, causing him to blurt out in terror, "Oh no." With his entire leg unexpectedly clamped tight by the vicious beast, he mentally lamented that his leg was trapped. Without a shred of panic, the skeleton immediately raised the weapon in his hand high and growled, "Then take this one-liner." Accompanied by a lightning strike, a small skeleton suddenly appeared out of nowhere to deliver an extra blow, causing him to gloat happily and shout, "Buy one, get one free." That tricky maneuver slammed down forcefully onto the crown of the beast's head. Yet the monster merely let out a low growl without taking any damage at all, making the rookie break out in a cold sweat as he muttered to himself that this attack had completely zero effect. The avatar scrambled backward while dodging continuous pounces, gasping for breath as he realized this skeleton body was much harder to control than he had imagined, and keeping this up was definitely not a good idea. Right in the nick of time, his eyes flashed with a hint of hope when he caught sight of something in the corner of the pile of dry bones. Ignoring the wild beast charging madly to pounce on its prey, the skeleton spread his arms wide and roared, "Hand it over." Instantly, countless broken bone fragments flew up and gathered together, as he activated the skeletal armament instinct skill to gather them. A gigantic reaper scythe took shape as he spun around to deliver a wind-dripping slash horizontally across the monster's chest, shouting, "Go to hell." Suffering painful wounds, the two-headed wolf bared its fangs and claws madly, growling with furious indignation. But the undead rookie was quick-handed and sharp-eyed enough to jam a large piece of bone right between its jaws, leaving it flustered and forced to bite down hard. Returning to reality, the main body standing quietly suddenly twitched with a grimace, let out a grunt, HMPH, and coughed up blood while clutching his chest. Wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth, the young man was shocked to realize the harsh truth that injuries sustained in the undead realm actually transferred back to the real world, making this system far more dangerous than he had imagined. Returning to that dark world, the skeleton looked coldly at the monster corpse under its feet and clicked its tongue before walking away, figuring that wolf head was already dead anyway. The avatar immediately reached its withered hand forward, preparing to harvest its first trophy. He plunged his hand deep into the beast's carcass, ruthlessly robbing it of its energy and declaring, "Then let this death serve me." The Reaper's scythe was raised high once more, radiating overwhelming demonic chi along with the command, "Skeletal armament." With an extra fatal slash, he thoroughly finished off the remnants of the enemy on the bloody ground. From within the dark swamp, a soul orb glowing with a cold blue light leaped out into the open. As the dust cleared, the future lord of the undead stood tall, brandishing his scythe with great majesty after the battle of life and death. However, before he could look cool for even a few seconds, the skeleton had to drop to one knee on the ground, panting heavily from expending too much stamina. Looking back at the weapon in his hand, he smiled smugly, thinking skeletal armament turned out to be way more useful than he thought, truly living up to the skill gifted by the system. While he was lost in thought, a blue soul fire suddenly flickered into the air, making him curious. What is that?" That ghostly flame drifted close to him, completely drawing the avatar's attention. Suddenly, the flame burned fiercely, making the skeleton fidget as he wondered to himself, "What is this feeling of hunger?" Unable to resist the instinctual craving for power, he reached out and snatched the brilliant flame into his grasp. And then the skeleton opened its toothless jaw, swallowing that ghostly soul straight down into its chest cavity. Instantly, an abundant surge of energy coursed through all his joints as the system cheerfully reported, "Attribute level up." The new stats popped up to prove his recent effort, with his strength attribute increasing to 1.1, constitution at 1, agility at 1, and spirit at 1. Looking at his hand, which had just been upgraded with a bit of strength, the young man muttered with great satisfaction that the 0.1 increase in strength was definitely the effect of skeletal armament. The system panel displayed text indicating the harvest of soul power by 0.1, causing the guy to scratch his head in confusion. What on earth is this soul power used for? Like an ultra-dedicated employee, the system immediately showcased a bunch of awesome uses, explaining that soul power was converted from soul energy and possessed the ability to deduce skills, enhance potential, strengthen equipment, and a billion other fun uses. The corners of the skeleton's mouth curved into a sly smile, as its two hollow green eye sockets burned brightly in the night, meaning. In the young mage's mind, a grinding loop reminiscent of a hardcore killer for hire flashed by, devouring. The faces of the main body and the avatar merged as one to utter an ambition burning just as fiercely as a villainous boss. "I just need to keep hunting." The lonely silhouette strode across the garbage dump of bones, as the young man confidently concluded that he could level up infinitely and crash this entire server. While taking a stroll to catch some fresh breeze, the young man suddenly halted when the system radar just spotted a new target. A skeleton, the cannon fodder summon of a necromancer, and an apprentice-tier undead creature. The screen showed an emaciated skeleton charging forward with a knife, while the system ruthlessly roasted it to the max, knotting its weak body, flat brain with zero intelligence, and its fatal weakness located in its soul fire. Seeing a free meal served right to his doorstep, the rookie immediately raised his hand to chant, "Skeletal armament," and the system went ding-ding once again to congratulate the host on successfully crafting the piece of equipment, Bone Spear. The pumped-up young man charged in to pluck the feathers of the monsters blocking his path, while the system continuously reported good news like hitting the lottery. Agility plus 0.1, soul power plus 0.1. Every slash brought down an undead creature, obediently turning them into nutrients, resulting in constitution plus 0.1 and soul power plus 0.1. A torrent of soul power rushed in like a tidal wave circulating throughout his withered body, causing its owner to scream in pleasure like a berserk fanatic. "My power." Propping his majestic weapon against the ground, his attribute sheet had rocketed up to strength 3, agility, 2, constitution, 2, spirit, 2, along with 10 points of soul power. But the gamer's greed still wasn't satisfied as he felt it wasn't enough of a rush and he could become even more of a tank. In the blink of an eye, the scenery time-traveled back to the sunny reality right in the beloved courtyard of Haicheng High School. The teenage boy was still keeping his eyes tightly closed, immersed in his power trip as he kept muttering like chanting a sutra, "I can still get stronger, I can still get stronger," until a sweet female voice sounded out. Student Fang Zhou. Caught in the middle of daydreaming about being a superhero, he jumped in fright and snapped his eyes wide open as the voice rang right in his ear. Student Fang Zhou. Gathering his wits, the male student was startled to see the pretty Bai Xiaolian standing right in front of him. "Bai Xiaolian, why are you here?" But the girl anxiously interrupted him. "Fang Zhou, you." The young lady furrowed her brow, reprimanding the boy with a heartbroken expression. "Even if you awakened a crappy class, you can't just slash your wrist to vent your anger," leaving the young man completely blank and dazed. Huh. The necromancer was left torn between laughter and tears, silently lamenting in his heart that he was truly unlucky to have been misunderstood by this kid as a depressed youth wanting to give up on life. Next time he dived into the undead realm, he had better find some deserted corner. He hurriedly hid his bleeding hand and scratched his head in clarification. "I'm fine, I just accidentally brushed against a tree branch," but the girl's gaze remained full of suspicion. "Really?" The atmosphere suddenly turned awkwardly funny in the sun-drenched hallway. To break the silence, she took the initiative to invite him. "The meditation class is about to start, let's head back to class together," and the boy acted like he had caught a lifeline, nodding vigorously. "Oh sure." But just as he took a step to look cool, the young man suddenly clutched his chest and coughed up a mouthful of fresh blood, scaring the girl pale as she rushed over to support him while acting tough by saying, "It's fine, let me carry you to the infirmary right now." He raised his hand to block her, coughing while insisting, "I'm really fine," though internally he was crying rivers, realizing that grinding too hard in the undead realm had overloaded his real body. Right on cue, the system popped up a reminder like a family doctor stating that today's undead realm experience time had exceeded the limit, so the host should look after himself. A flash of curious yet excited light suddenly flickered across the young man's eyes. Staring fixedly at the system panel in front of him, the young man was as overjoyed as if he had struck gold upon discovering that his main body's stats had also gotten a piece of the pie. With strength skyrocketing to 1.2, constitution to 1.1, agility to 1.1, and spirit to 1.1, even sprouting a new line for summoning skeletons along with skill deduction and addition points, despite the girl beside him still tugging at his shirt in a panic. "Fang Zhou, are you really not about to kick the buckets?" Shrugging off the beauty's worries, his mind was now glued entirely to that divine plus button, nodding that this skill deduction feature had popped up too. The male student raised his face to the sky, his power fantasy delusions exploding as he pictured a future scenario where he could also imitate the top-tier whales and custom design his own exclusive ultimate move. Beneath the shade of the teaching building at Haicheng High School, a legendary necromancer seemed about to be born, starting right from these comedic and hyper-grinding antics. Here. Inside the large tiered classroom, the female teacher standing on the podium tapped her book and raised her voice to draw attention. "Students." The woman with blazing red hair and a hot figure introduced herself by saying her name was Shen Hongyu, and she was the teacher in charge of their meditation class. This teacher happened to be a lower-tier Silver Realm fire mage. Looking across the sea of students sitting with their eyes closed in concentration while a golden halo radiated around them, the teacher instructed in detail that this was the basic meditation method corresponding to their classes, and now everyone was required to use meditation to manifest their class abilities. The teacher's steady voice echoed across the classroom, stating that meditation could enhance spiritual power, and this was the core foundation for them to use their skills later on. Seeing that the kids seemed tense, Instructor Shen smiled softly to reassure them, but also didn't forget to narcissistically add, "Still, you don't need to be impatient. Failing at the start is completely normal. After all, an exceptional genius like myself took half a month of training to barely complete this step." Right at that moment, the young man sitting in the back unexpectedly received a notification from his game cheat system, detecting an available skill to learn called Skeleton Bone Meditation Technique, which could quickly simulate mastery, and asking if he wanted to start learning. Without even half a second of thought, the gamer's finger immediately locked it in and tapped the yes button. Instantly, countless glowing green magic runes poured out in a rush. They continuously circled and flooded straight into his mind, causing his eyes to widen slightly in surprise. Soul energy rapidly connected his physical body with the nether realm, creating a perfect synchronization between the teenage boy and the skeleton clone beneath the black cloak. A brilliant notification box popped up with good news, announcing the successful learning of the skeleton bone meditation technique. which made the corner of his mouth twitch into a smug grin at how unexpectedly fast he could learn it. The young mage continued his extremely arrogant train of thought as he looked at the clone's image, thinking that as far as he was concerned, it was nothing more than just glancing at the clone a few times. Realizing the loophole in the game, he felt secretly thrilled. Plus, as long as he didn't enter the nether realm to experience it firsthand, the skeleton clone would automatically train in meditation, which was equivalent to him cultivating 24/7, proving this system to be a truly innate necromancer divine body. While feeling smug about idling and farming, the system suddenly sent a private message stating that the host's spiritual power had leveled up, and they could re-enter the nether realm for experience, causing him to rub his chin and figure out the issue that entering the nether realm consumed spiritual power, meaning the training of both the main body and the clone could not be neglected. Not wanting to waste resources, the teenager's eyes closed tightly as a decisive command echoed in his mind to open the nether realm experience. In the blink of an eye, the weary leveling warrior resumed his stride, racing across the desolate crimson land. Just as he launched his attack, his capable minion straightaway hurled a blue spear that pierced right through the target, casually brushing aside the loot as Constitution plus 0.1 and Soul Strength plus 0.1. The hollow eye sockets burned fiercely with killing intent, while the heart of the controller blazed with passion at being able to hunt and kill to his heart's content again. After a while of diligent farming, the system popped up a top-up suggestion, discovering that the clone skill had reached instinctive proficiency and could be used as skill material for the main body to deduce an unknown skill, estimated to consume 10 points of soul strength. The young man nodded in realization, figuring out the truth that the system's previous claim about deducing skills meant it had to be performed inside the nether realm. Without hesitating to spend points, the skeleton clasped its hands together and loudly chanted to start the deduction. The magic interface rose with a huge green question mark, accompanied by a moving progress bar and the text that a new skill was about to appear while being analyzed. The screen flashed brightly to report a successful unboxing result, announcing the successful skill deduction of the bone frame flying spear. After reading the detailed description, the apprentice-tier proficient bone frame flying spear condensed bone-throwing spears to hurl at the enemy, combining both armor-piercing physical damage and death energy damage, with the quantity, power, and range determined by mental attributes and skill proficiency, leaving the young man extremely satisfied that the bone frame flying spear happened to correspond to the weapon he had crafted. Even more shocking was that the screen openly displayed an entire skill tree branching out from the bone frame flying spear into bone frame shield, bone frame giant claw, and bone frame imprisonment, leaving the gamer overjoyed that he was actually gifted an entire set of derivative skill trees. Hoisting the high-end spear onto his shoulder, the clone sauntered off with calculated steps, thinking that he needed to accumulate more soul strength, but his footsteps suddenly halted. Confronted by a pack of ghost hounds that had just entered his range, the Lord of Death sneered, "What a coincidence, I'll just use you guys to test out my new skill." No sooner had the words left his mouth than a gigantic beam of energy carrying immense power struck straight down from the sky, creating a shocking bone-shattering explosion. Instantly, those bones carrying brilliant blue fireballs darted forward, tearing through the air straight toward the enemy. The executioner savored the results and nodded approvingly, remarking that this was far too powerful compared to apprentice-tier skills like Death, Missile, or Weakening Ray. But the joy of farming was cut short when the experience points dropped meagerly as Agility plus 0.05, Soul Strength plus 0.05, Strength plus 0.05, and Soul Strength plus 0.05, making the young man frown in confusion as the attribute and soul strength gains provided by these small skeletons had decreased. Looking at the sluggish stat sheet with Strength at 3.1, Constitution at 2.05, Agility at 2.05, Spirit at 2, and Soul Strength at 10.2, the system user clicked his tongue and sighed that the system certainly wouldn't let him farm attributes mindlessly, as this was forcing him to head deeper into the more dangerous areas of the nether realm. Even so, with a stingy mindset, the young man hoisted his rugged spear and loudly declared that before he could no longer harvest skeletal essence at all, he had to work hard to devour these low-level undead even more. In a flash, the scene snapped back to the real-world classroom where instructor Shen Hongyu stood imposingly, frowning uncomfortably as she heard chuckling noises and barked out at HMPH. Instantly, a hand stealthily tugged at the corner of the daydreaming young man's shirt and whispered, "Hey, hey." The male student broke out in a cold sweat and snapped out of it, seeing the teacher coldly questioning, "Fang Chu, everyone else is working hard at meditation. Why are you sitting there grinning stupidly?" Leaving him flustered and stalling, I. The sharp-mouthed guy from the desk behind popped up again to smugly taunt, "Teacher, I know Fang Chu basically has no way to successfully meditate." A male student in front wondered, That's not right, isn't the meditation effect better for those with rare classes? To which he replied patronizingly, idiot, you have to look at what kind of rare class it is. The classroom bustled with whispers and analysis, noting that necromancers rarely had anyone awake in them, and the skeleton bone meditation technique they learned was rumored to be a flawed version, leading someone else to nod in agreement that it was no wonder Fang Chu probably even found it difficult to enter a meditative state, leaving the owner of the class with a dark and speechless expression. Instructor Shen Hongyu sighed softly and sternly admonished, I know your class has a hard time with meditation, but you still can't just give up. Right now, you're wasting the whole class's time because of your own lack of effort. Using that as an excuse, she turned to Lu Renjia and said, look at how hardworking Lu Renjia is over there. He was already able to meditate a knife hilt out after just one class. The blonde guy holding a flaming sword hilt falsely humbled himself. Teacher Shen flatters me. I've only comprehended 1/3 of the meditation method. This cultivation speed is just ordinary genius level. While casting a provocative sideways glance at his mortal enemy, he thought, Fang Chu, by now you must clearly understand the gap between a necromancer and other classes. Hearing the empty boast, Fang Chu merely smirked coldly and leisurely dropped a remark. Heh heh, that speed is indeed very ordinary, making the blonde guy jump in shock and blurt out, what? Immediately, the sharp-mouthed guy from the front desk turned around, pointed right at his face, and scolded, you can't even enter a meditative state, you need to check your own condition before talking big. Without bothering to argue, Fang Chu instantly erupted with a billowing wave of dark necromantic chi, frightening the blonde guy into gasping, huh, and causing the surrounding people to panic and shout as they backed away. Instructor Shen Hongyu furrowed her brow tightly and shouted sternly to restore order to the classroom. Lu Renjia, pull your mind back in. Seeing this, the annoyed teacher scolded, Fang Chu, what is the meaning of this? Meditation class is for learning meditation. If you want to throw your weight around and act like a thug, wait until the actual combat class later. But the surnamed Fang youth calmly replied, I just wanted classmate Lu Renjia to step aside a little. The young man smirked, flashed a sinister smile, and leisurely continued, so that it's convenient for you to witness my meditation progress. No sooner had he spoken than the whole class buzzed with chatter, wondering if Fang Chu had actually succeeded in meditating, though Lu Renjia still tried to salvage some dignity by sneering, success, so what? At best, it's just completing a tiny fraction of the entry level. Ignoring the frogs at the bottom of the well, Fang Chu half closed his eyes and steadily chanted the skeleton bone meditation technique. Immediately, a wave of dark chi burst forth violently like a gale, sweeping through the entire classroom, shaking everyone's gaze. Lu Renjia and the sharp-mouthed buddy next to him were instantly scared pale, standing frozen in place with their jaws dropped. Even the experienced instructor Shen Hongyu turned pale and cried out in shock, How is it possible? In just a single class, the skeleton bone meditation technique has already reached mastery. Backed by the shadow of the magnificent giant skeleton, Fang Chu smiled seductively and delivered a devastating final blow. This speed of mine is probably about 1,000,000,000 times stronger than an ordinary genius, right? Right at that moment, the classroom door swung wide open, and a burly teacher with a thick chinstrap beard walked in, nodding approvingly as he said, it looks like your meditation progress isn't bad at all. The bearded teacher put his hands on his hips and loudly announced, in that case, let's have a test tomorrow, causing Fang Chu to raise an eyebrow in question. A test. The entire class immediately wailed and complained in an uproar, asking why it was so fast, whether it was already time for actual combat class, and crying that their meditation methods hadn't even reached mastery yet. However, the blonde guy Lu Renjia seized this opportunity to sneer to himself. Heh heh, Fang Chu, actual combat class isn't like meditation class in my home turf. Let's see how a noob mage like you can keep acting high and mighty then. In a flash, the scene shifted back to the gloomy crimson nether realm, where Fang Chu's skeleton clone was sauntering along. Only the bony heels were seen stepping heavily onto the parched ground, preparing for a new hunt. Fang Chu silently assessed his own changes, noting that after the skeleton bone meditation technique reached mastery, the duration he could linger in the nether realm had also increased quite a bit. Therefore, the young man resolutely gripped the spear in the skeleton's hands with burning determination, telling himself not to be lazy and to take advantage of his unexhausted spiritual power to slaughter even more undead creatures. The figure of the Grim Reaper darted nimbly, wielding its weapon to tear apart the pathetic enemies before it while roaring madly. More, even more. Dark chi surged with every fatal stab, piercing straight through the chests of the mobs blocking the way. Sweeping across a long stretch littered with white skeletal ruins, the workaholic monster roared that it could still kill even more. Only until the glowing blue eye flames in its sockets began to flicker repeatedly did the skeleton finally stop to catch its breath. Looking at the battlefield littered with achievements, the Lord of Death nodded to himself. figuring that today's spiritual power was also nearly exhausted. As soon as those words left his mouth, a glowing green notification popped up stating that the host's class level had leveled up, and the skeleton clone would receive enhancements accordingly, causing him to excitedly cry out, "Oh, looks like my efforts weren't wasted at all." Without a second of hesitation, a bony finger reached out and tapped gently on the yes button. Instantly, the clone's leveling progress bar appeared, accompanied by a gigantic emerald pillar of light engulfing its entire body. The cracked armor began to mend itself, and dark red patterns surged brilliantly. The death eye sockets flared with an oppressive and savage energy. The result was a brand new stat sheet hitting his eyes with the skeleton clone just reaching the intermediate apprentice rank, featuring 5 strength, 3 constitution, 3 agility, 3 spirit, and 10 soul strength, equipped with a gray skeletal longspear, accompanied by a system notification of successful level up and automatically learning a new skill, Brutal Strike, which made the farming youth praise it admiringly that leveling up could actually yield skills as well. Reading the green information text of the new skill, Fang Chu happily envisioned the carnage of the apprentice-tier entry-level Brutal Strike skill, with its explosive effect of a massive strength-based attack on the enemy, relying on strength attributes and skill proficiency. The Lord of Death patted his ribcage smugly, thinking, "Awesome, with this skill, my speed at slaughtering these undead will be boosted to a whole new level." But life wasn't a fairy tale, and before his arrogant smile could fade, a wave of dizziness washed over him, causing the 2 green flames in his socket to twitch just like a dying light bulb. The farming monster clutched its bald skull and collapsed to the ground in tears of frustration, realizing that while it was busy admiring the cool skill, it had totally forgotten about its mana bar, and its spiritual power had bottomed out ages ago. The scene suddenly shifted to the sunny Haithang High School courtyard, filled with energetic youths in the prime of their youth. Returning to reality, Fang Chu sat slumped on the steps, grimacing and clutching his head as he groaned, "Damn, that hurts so much, this mana bar is still way too humble." Seeing this, the thoughtful female class monitor walked over to check on him, asking, "Fang Chu, what's wrong with you? Ever since meditation class, your face has looked like a rag all week," forcing the male protagonist to smile wryly to save face by saying, "It's nothing, just training a bit too hard every day," while secretly sweating and telling himself that the secret of this game cheat system must never be exposed, and next time he logged into the Netherrealm he should just hide alone for safety. While he was self-isolating, the familiar sharp-mouthed loud voice rang out right in the face of the Necromancer. "As expected of a trash class, after meditating just a little bit you're already this weak," prompting a minion to chime in and back him up. "Spot on, don't think stepping 1 foot into meditation makes you hot stuff. This class ultimately still relies on fists to talk." The female monitor couldn't stand it anymore and stepped forward to stand up for him. "You guys tone it down, did Fang Chu touch your rice bowl? Why are you always barking around and targeting him?" But Lu Renjia just stuck out his flabby chin to argue stubbornly, "I'm just speaking unpalatable truths." Seeing someone backing him up, Lu Renjia got even more bold and pushed his luck, pointing straight at Fang Chu's face and barking a long rant. "What's up, still itching for a beating? You bastard, you think this young master is still as weak as a week ago?" He slicked back his hair to pose, waving his hands as the fiery sword danced like a fan, declaring, "Old man here has achieved enlightenment and learned class skills. Right now I just need to sneeze and I'll easily send you to meet your ancestors." Right when the atmosphere was thick with gunpowder, the muscle teacher's lion roar echoed to restore order. "Everyone rein in your attitudes," causing the students to instantly deflate and mumble, "Teacher Lu." Teacher Lu glared daggers to lecture the delusional power trippers. "The school teaches skills so you can go hack monsters in the future, not for you guys to bare your fangs and tear at each other," making Lu Renjia pull in his tail and obediently submit. "I understand now." Clearing away the obstacle, the teacher turned to look at Fang Chu with meaningful eyes. "I've seen your meditation test scores, you better go all out in the combat class too," causing the young man to quickly nod in obedience. "Yes, sir." Watching the teacher's sturdy, masculine back walk away, Fang Chu rubbed his chin narcissistically, thinking, "It looks like Teacher Lu really intends to dote on and favor a genius like me." Without letting the lazy students slack off, Teacher Lu stood in the middle of the stadium and roared, "Everyone assemble." And the flock of sheep rushed over like a scattered beehive, shouting, "Understood." The teacher instructed some errand-running students to bring all the equipment over, and a male student wearing a baseball cap eagerly chirped, "Yes, right away." Before long, a weirdly shaped machine was pushed out into the middle of the courtyard to the bewilderment of everyone, eliciting a HMPH. Teacher Lu proudly patted the robot's metallic shoulder and smiled cunningly, introducing to them, "Let me present this super-duper durable apprentice-tier trial puppet, used to measure your combat capability and sturdiness." Pointing at the LED screen on the machine's chest, the teacher began explaining the scoring system, taking the lowest-tier Abyss Little Imp as a reference point, nodding that this robot could take its claws straight to the chest, equating to a standard defense force of 100. Looking at the dilapidated state of the puppet, an itchy-handed student knocked on its skull and asked doubtfully, "Teacher, this piece of junk looks so rundown, what if we accidentally break it completely?" Making Fang Chu outside also raise an eyebrow in curiosity at the thought of breaking it. Hearing the naive question, Teacher Lu sneered, slapping the puppet's head with a smack and declaring boldly, "The history of our school has never recorded a single freshman skilled enough to even scratch it. Today, if anyone uses pure strength to rip the head off this puppet." The teacher spread his arms wide to up the ante and finalized the reward. "I, Lu Hu, pledge my honor as an instructor to guarantee that person a spot reward of 20 contribution points." As soon as they smelled money, the crowd of students instantly gasped and cheered like they had struck gold, shouting, "Whoa, so generous, 20 league contribution points. Haha, no way can we hide our cards anymore after this." Under the capitalist halo, Fang Chu's eyes lit up into the shape of coin symbols, thinking that in this pragmatic world, contribution points were hard cash. And if you wanted to buy toys or extra skill books, where would you get them if you didn't grind for them? Greed flared up and the crowd scrambled to raise their hands frantically like a chaotic market, shouting, "Teacher, I want a test. Move aside, I'm going first." But the teacher immediately barked to restore order. "Line up one by one, general classes go test first." Opening the batting was a fire attribute mage student who struck a cool pose, channeling blazing red fire with both hands as if preparing a barbecue, accompanied by an artistic wave of his hand and a resonant roar of fireball spell. A brilliant fireball slammed hard into the robot in the most grandiose fashion possible. But who could foresee life's twists? Teacher Lu looked at the electronic board and calmly read out the data. Attack force 48, leaving the mage pale, stuttering in pride. "I clearly used enough force to bite my lips and it felt earth-shattering. Why is the displayed number just a tiny handful?" The second person was a swordsman who rushed forward, slashing through the air while shouting coolly, "Critical strike," only to receive the number 41 and want to dig a hole and hide. The third person, unwilling to accept defeat, transformed into an archer, drawing a bow to fire a blinding shot, with the stone-petrifying water arrow sealing the final score at a neat 50 amidst the utter despair of the rookie class. After the sweating peons finished, Teacher Lu crossed his arms and announced, "The general classes have completely finished testing. The remaining special classes can take the stage in order." Down below, the students with ordinary classes hugged each other and cried, lamenting that among the trash classes tested just now, not a single one managed to crawl past the number 60. Making them realize why Teacher Lu was so generous to brag loudly, since those 20 contribution points were essentially pie in the sky, and wondering what scores the pampered hidden-class darlings would achieve. Meanwhile, Fang Chu stood in contemplative thought, rubbing his chin, dark chi rising as he turned around, thinking that his current attack force completely relied on his skeleton minions, and wondering if the test puppet's stats allowed for cumulative calculation. Lu Renjia, the sharp-mouthed guy, walked past and dropped some shade. "Look at that twisted face of yours. You already know your attack capability hits rock bottom, right?" Making Fang Chu lazily raise an eyebrow. Lu Renjia rushed forward, roaring with excitement. "Now I'm going to open your eyes and let you see the gap between us after learning a skill." He brandished a glowing red dagger, swinging a supersized wind-tearing slash straight at the robot. The result displayed on the screen was the number 80, and he tossed his head in self-satisfaction. "See that? This is the dominance of the hidden class phantom assassin." But before he could act cool, a male student behind him sneered, "As if only you awakened a hidden class, what are you being so smug about?" Cutting short the show-off session, Teacher Lu held the roll call list and called out in a deep voice, "Yi Fan, up for testing." And the cold male student resolutely answered clearly. Instantly, the crowd buzzed with chatter, recalling that Yi Fan awakened the super cool Demon Slayer class, and confirming the rumors that as soon as he awakened, he caught the eyes of high-ranking school big shots and was even specially granted an independent research team, prompting envy over just how terrifying his attack power must be. Yi Fan stepped onto the stage with a romantic flair, flicking his hair as a gigantic green energy scythe phantom condensed behind his back. His gaze was sharp and focused with high concentration, preparing for the fatal swing. Launching himself into the air like a deity, Yi Fan brought the giant scythe down onto the robot's head, shouting loudly, "Vengeful strike." Yet the screen displayed a tiny number 65, leaving the nerds standing outside scratching their heads in curiosity, whispering, "Huh, this number is only slightly higher than mine, just 65. Yi Fan's emerald eyes flashed with a burning intent to kill as he muttered, "It's not over yet." It turned out that this young man's skill was combo attacks. The number on the puppet's chest danced wildly up to 69 to everyone's astonishment. The stormy slashing chain continued to reap results, as the number jumped to 88, and then hit a neat 100, at which point the wind stopped blowing. Yi Fan stood with his scythe striking a cool pose next to the machine while Teacher Lu nodded and called out his name. Yifan, attack capability 100. Observing from afar, Fang Chu smiled with a calculated smirk, realizing that attack points could indeed be accumulated, meaning that dismantling that battered test puppet wouldn't be too difficult for him at all. The dark attribute student Yifan sauntered down amidst admiring gazes, leaving behind whispers that in this class. The surnamed Yi youth put his hands in his pockets, tilted his chin up to the sky narcissistically, and thought that there was still no rival qualified to surpass his Yi fan. Seeing someone else steal the spotlight, Lu Renjia pouted sourly. This guy just played dirty by adding extra strikes to get those points. If I knew, I would have swung a few more times too. But he was immediately slapped down by the gray-haired girl. You're an assassination class assassin. Where on earth do you get a combo/skill to try and keep up? Teacher Lu ignored the arguing punks and called Zaya Oxian up, leading the buxom girl to step out eagerly and say, "Yes, sir." Zaya Oxian puffed out her cheeks and held her breath, constantly engaging in self-suggestion in her heart that no matter how pathetic her combat was as a hidden class holder, she absolutely couldn't afford to lose face too badly. Swinging her long, slender legs in an artistic curve, she generated a furious storm of green leaves lashing straight at the target. But painfully for her, Teacher Lu calmly announced, Zaya Oxian attack capability 31, turning her to stone on the spot as she wailed and cursed the heavens. Damn it, the combat power of support classes is way too weak. Lu Renjia seized the moment again, baring his teeth in a loud laugh. Haha, you talked a big game with your mouth, but the result is just this little bit of cat scratch skill. If I threw a few more punches, my attack would at least be 80 or higher. While the bearded teacher calmly called the next person, Gu Chizhu. Taking the stage was the Storm Mage student, who waved both arms to release crackling green lightning bolts, with wind energy missiles bringing in the result. Gu Chizhu, attack capability 72. Next up, the tanky powerhouse of the Earth Knight class rammed his shield straight into the robot's chest with a loud crash. Shield armor impact bringing in a score of Zhao Yuan. Attack capability 69. Not stopping there, a muscular heavy hammer warrior student swung a gigantic hammer down with a heavy thud giant hammer impact sealing it with Chen Yang. Attack capability 84. The watching students started smacking their lips and chatting that those big bros' attack powers were several times higher than theirs. Yet from start to finish, not a single one managed to break the milestone of 100, which was a pity since 100 couldn't even scratch the puppet, meaning Teacher Lu's pile of contribution points would probably go unclaimed, though someone countered by asking if they forgot there was still a hidden class figure who hadn't taken the stage yet. The whole group turned simultaneously to look at the youth standing silently like a dark statue, realizing, that's right, there's still the Necromancer Fang Chu to close out the list. Hearing that, Lu Renjia's mouth itched with mockery as he said, you guys are burning incense and pinning hopes on a Necromancer. That punk probably can't even squeeze out 10 attack points. And a few sycophants echoed with laughter. Ha ha ha, bro, Lu is spot on, not to mention his skeletal junk. Whether his summon can even stand upright is still an unknown. Unfazed by the whispering, Fang Chu spoke in an even voice from behind to provoke. Are you 100% sure I can't snag those 20 contribution points? Making Lu Renjia puff out his chest and retort. Ha ha ha, as if a piece of trash like you could get them. He pointed at the puppet's head and made a grand bet. Listen here, if you can actually damage it, I'll swallow this machine right here on the spot for you to see. Fang Chu smirked, stepping forward with a spring in his step. Those words came right out of your own mouth, leaving Lu Renjia dazed behind him as he added a HMPH. Reaching the middle of the courtyard, the male protagonist calmly spread his arms and politely reminded everyone, please step back a little bit, everyone. The sharp-mouthed guy still stubbornly tried to banter. What's wrong? Scared your pathetic data will be seen by us and will laugh our heads off. But Fang Chu calmly closed his eyes and replied, no. Suddenly, a wave of green energy burst forth as illusory hell chains surged from the ground to surround Fang Chu, accompanied by a mystical voice saying, it's just that the skill I'm about to throw out requires a slightly larger space. From within the dark fog of death, the figures of hideous skeletons with burning blue eyes sauntered out behind their lord. The students standing outside were so scared their jaws dropped to the ground as they screamed in terror. What the actual hell? 10 skeletons? Is Fang Chu planning to raid the entire school? Didn't rumors say a newly awakened apprentice-tier mage can only summon 2? Could this guy Fang Chu have massaged his way to leveling up into an iron-black mage? Teacher Lu wiped away a cold sweat, screaming inwardly in his mind as he remembered a legend. Even the female necromancer hailed as the most genius in history, Su Xinhian, could only summon 5 skull heads when she first awakened. Looking at Fang Chu standing with his hands crossed in the surging dark qi, the muscular teacher secretly swallowed hard, wondering if this kid Fang Chu's talent was actually even more overpowered than Su Xinhian's. Meanwhile, the workaholic was rubbing his chin smugly and thinking, good thing I held back and held my cards close to my chest a bit. Otherwise, that thing called attention would be way too outrageously flashy. Without dragging things out, the Lord of Death raised his chin and commanded his skeleton minions, "Go bite it for me." The pack of skeletons rushed forward like off-leash dogs, leaving the sharp-mouthed Lu Renjia shivering as he muttered. The speed of these skeletons is way over the allowed limit. In the blink of an eye, 20 monsters swarmed the trial robot, punching and kicking furiously without missing a single beat. The electronic board on the robot's chest continuously jumped wildly like an odometer. 30, 45, 60, 65. The onlookers began pointing and judging, making a big fuss over how the attack power wasn't considered all that high after all. Though someone else nodded that 65 was already decent since plenty of warrior-class guys bent over backwards and still couldn't crawl past that mark. While another ridiculed that summoning a whole bunch of minions only to squeeze out that many points meant necromancers would forever be trash. Seeing this, Lu Renjia seized the opportunity to burst out laughing right in his opponent's face. Is that really it? 65 points calculated on average means every single crappy skull of yours didn't even pack 10 points of attacking force. Ignoring the barking dog by his ear, Fang Zhou narrowed his eyes and dropped a cold remark. Don't be in such a hurry to bare your teeth, the real fun is just beginning. This caused Lu Renjia to frown unhappily as he retorted, what do you mean? We've reached this point and you're still trying to struggle and salvage some dignity. The dark aura surrounding the male lead erupted even more violently as he crooked a sneer and barked. 10 aren't enough to punch. Then drag 20 out to tear it to shreds for me. The whole class was struck with absolute terror once more, their mouths hanging wide open in shock. What on earth is this? Was Fang Zhou still intentionally hiding his hand this whole time? Someone rubbed their eyes and muttered, there are at least 20 skeletons in that pile. Has history ever recorded any necromancer hacking the game like this? Meanwhile, the female class president clapped happily, knowing right from the start that their Fang Zhou would definitely make things happen. Not stopping there, a lead skeleton swung a punch overflowing with power, slamming it straight into the machine's electronic control panel. The numbers skyrocketed to 97, causing the machine to begin wailing with sorrowful warning sirens. Then a series of critical blows rained down, smashing right past the 100 ceiling and shooting straight up to 108 amidst crackling, sparking electrical flashes. With a massive explosion, the experimental machine-dubbed ultra-sturdy was blasted straight up into the air like a piece of worthless scrap toy, before the witness of 1,000 eyes. The entire crowd of students fell speechless, hanging their jaws as they watched the puppet take flight across the deep blue sky. When they finally regained their wits, the whole school courtyard was like a bustling marketplace. Wasn't 65 points supposed to be the limit where the puppet exceeded its endurance and blew up? One person tore at their hair in frustration. Is this real or fake? Fang Zhou only awakened a few days ago. Another grabbed their head and screamed, a monster. This Fang Zhou guy is completely inhuman. Lu Renjia's legs turned to jelly as he stared up at the electronic board that had crashed to the ground with a look of utter despair. Did it actually break through the measuring limits of the machine? That blazing red 999 stabbed painfully into his eyes. How could something so absurdly impossible happen? Indeed, Lu Renjia's face distorted as sweat poured down like rain, his mouth gaping wide enough to fit a whole chicken egg because he simply could not accept this humiliating truth. With absolute composure, Fang Zhou leisurely strolled over to the pile of scrap metal and picked up the battered head of the puppet. The young man shoved the iron head straight against Lu Renjia's chest, flashing a gentle yet murderous smile as he said, "It's lunchtime, you can open your mouth and swallow it now." This left the other guy stammering as he backed away. Seeing his opponent frightened to the point of nearly wetting himself, Fang Zhou gave a cold huff. Fine if you don't want to eat. Instantly, the dark eyes of the Lord of the Undead flared up, radiating a deadly pressure. Vanish from my sight forever. The miserably defeated loser tucked his tail between his legs and bolted in a panic, not forgetting to toss back a classic villainous line to salvage a shred of dignity. Next time I'll definitely teach you a lesson. Business finished, the female class president sidled up with big starry eyes full of admiration. Fang Zhou, you're way too op. What's your cultivation secret? Hurry up and start a class to pass down your skills to me. But the Fang surnamed youth merely scratched his head with an evasive laugh. Well, I just do regular meditation training like everyday meals. The burly instructor Lu Hu strode over and clapped in applause. Well done, Fang Zhou, today you really opened this old teacher's eyes. The male lead maintained his modest attitude. You flatter me, teacher. Suddenly, the teacher gave his student's shoulder a heavy pat, nodding in promise. I'll definitely pound the table to secure a spot for you on the school's priority cultivation seed list. In a flash, the scenery shifted to the luxurious principal's office, where a white-haired elder was listening to a report. Principal, out of 10,000 total freshmen across the school, 9,103 successfully awakened while 897 suffered the bad luck of failing. Calculating that, the successful awakening rate is estimated at around 91%. The secretary's steady voice continued the statistics. Meanwhile, those who drew rare classes total 85 people, successively including heavyweights like Earth Knight Zhao Yuan, Balladeer by Xia Olian, Storm Mage Gu Zhihui, and Demon Hunter Yi Fan. The silver-haired veteran principal stroked his beard and nodded approvingly. Out of the 100 priority cultivation seed quotas, these 85 people can be directly placed on the list. But when his gaze swept to the male lead's file, he frowned and muttered, "However, Fang Zhou." Glancing at the unlucky class written on the paper, he let out a harsh sigh. The Necromancer class has no future at all, so let's just cross him off and exclude him. Right at that moment, a knock on the door cut off his thoughts and the dignified principal spoke up. "Come in." Seeing muscle-bound teacher Lu rush in frantically, the principal asked in surprise, "Teacher Lu, aren't you supposed to be teaching a combat class? What brings you running to my office in your free time?" The burly teacher panted heavily in reply. "Principal, I have an urgent matter to report." Without missing a beat, Lu Hu lunged forward, rummaged through the pile of files on the desk, grabbed a sheet and yelled, "Found it." This left the principal frowning in confusion. "You're all flustered, what on earth are you trying to pull?" The combat instructor slapped Fang Zhou's profile right in front of the big boss and announced clearly, "Necromancer Fang Zhou, I strongly nominate him to join the school's seed list." The principal crossed his arms and shook his head in refusal. The Necromancer class indeed has massive potential, but reality has proven that potential is terribly difficult to translate into actual strength. Teacher Lu immediately countered with an example. Major Su Tongnan is also a necromancer, and her combat prowess is by no means inferior to other magic specializations. Struck back, the old man rubbed his temples in frustration and replied, "Su Tongnan only managed to pull off a human shape because her legendary father poured all his resources into nurturing her. As for this Fang Zhou kid you're talking about, what capital does he have to compare?" The principal stood up, walked over to the window, and lowered his voice with a warning tone. "Instructor, I know you and Fang Zhou's parents used to be comrades who went through life and death together. They truly are heroes of the Federation." However, the old man's attitude instantly hardened with strict principles. "Nevertheless, this seed list is of supreme importance. Coming with it is not only a mountain of cultivation resources, but also a heavy responsibility to carry on one's shoulders." Unfazed, Teacher Lu presented the stack of documents before the big boss and fired back with confidence. "That's precisely why I'm nominating Fang Zhou. This is the report on his performance in the meditation class and the combat class just now." This caused the principal to raise a curious eyebrow. "Oh." Barely glancing over the paper, the old man startled and read aloud in shock. In his very first meditation class, he instantly comprehended the skeletal meditation law, and in actual combat, he could summon over 20 skeletons. Seizing the opportunity, Teacher Lu smugly added, "With his monster-like talent, there's a high chance he'll rewrite history for the Necromancer class." This forced a compromise from the principal. "No need to say more. Wait until the battlefield simulation opens and we'll see his results before deciding further." Holding the file in his hand, a glint of interest flashed in the principal's eyes. "Fang Zhou, is it? This old man rather wants to see just what kind of trick this kid can pull off." The scenery glided back to the sunlit school courtyard, where the female class president trotted along behind Fang Zhou, asking with curiosity, "Fang Zhou, how on earth did you get so overpoweringly badass?" She blinked her large, round eyes with open-faced envy. "It was your very first combat class, yet you could summon an army of skeletons that dense." But the grinding youth merely shrugged and replied indifferently, "I just summoned a little more than usual, what's the big deal?" Hearing that feigned innocence, the girl pointed straight at his face and exposed him. "Excessive modesty is the peak of arrogance, you know, General." Fang Zhou burst into hearty laughter. "Ha ha, I really think this is no big deal." Softly wiping the corner of his eye, the Lord of the Dead wore a sly, narcissistic smile internally. "How could I possibly tell you the truth that the strength I just displayed compared to my actual overpowered might is just a single hair off 9 oxen?" While he was busy flexing inwardly, an arrogant voice rang out from behind. "Fang Zhou, stop right there." This caused him to halt his steps and turn his head around. Standing against the gentle breeze, Youth Fan stroked his chest with extreme narcissism, dropping full anime-style dialogue. "I Yi Fan have never feared anyone in my entire life. Looking across this entire Class 1, only you are qualified to be my destined rival." Faced with that sheer delusion of grandeur, Fang Zhou and the female class president could only look at each other in speechlessness. Clear giant question marks hovering over their faces. Not bothering to care about role-playing chums, Fang Zhou waved his hand and turned away to walk off coldly. "Sorry, I have zero time to entertain anyone with 8th grade syndrome. What a weirdo." This caused Yi Fan to panic and chase after him. "Stop right there." The demon hunter blocked his path and pointed with firm conviction. "I don't want an empty challenge from you. Instead, I hope you can act as my sparring partner." Fang Zhou raised an eyebrow in surprise. "Sparring partner?" Yi Fan assumed a super serious look and explained in detail. After awakening the rare Demon Hunter class, I was specially cleared for a specialized research project. The core research inside desperately needs a sparring partner with strength-matching mind to collect data. The reason sounded somewhat plausible, but capitalist Fang Zhou simply spread his hands, shrugged, and asked pragmatically, "Then why on earth should I waste my time coordinating with you for that research nonsense?" Yi Fan smiled with confidence, raising one finger to promise an astronomical price. 10 contribution points to cover you as my sparring partner for 2 weeks, plus all meals and lodging fully paid. The moment he smelled money, Fang Zhou flipped faster than a pancake, lunging forward to shake hands instantly while beaming brightly. "Pleasure doing business." Yi Fan chuckled smugly. "Heh heh, as expected of the lifelong rival I've set my sights on." This left the class president standing behind with her jaw hanging wide open. "Huh, you just sold yourself out to grind for someone like that just like this." Fearing the debtor might change his mind, Yi Fan turned and bolted in a rush. "No time to lose, drag your carcass over to my place right now." The class president trotted after Fang Zhou, exasperatedly questioning him. "Did you really just blindly sell yourself out to that 8th grade syndrome guy?" The male lead stuffed both hands into his pockets, smiling with the satisfaction of a bumper harvest. 10 fresh contribution points. That's no small number. If I don't slurp that up, it's a total waste of heavenly gifts. Fang Zhou glanced sideways at the pile of contribution points he had just received, whispering to himself that his family back home definitely needed these badly. Thinking of that, he turned to probe his female classmate beside him. "By the way, is that Yi Fan guy some kind of rich second-generation heir to be throwing around such generous handouts?" This made her curl her lip in response. "Rich second generation? My foot." All those contribution points were advanced to him by the research society. Seeing the other party's delusional look, the class president crossed her arms, sighed, and explained further. "Since their advances, Yi Fan is bound to break his back paying off that debt sooner or later." However, looking at the guy's extravagant spending habits, she could only shake her head in dismay. "With that kind of wasteful spending, I guess he'll have to spend a solid 20 years after graduation just paying off debts." This made Fang Zhou break out in a cold sweat and mutter, "Gulp. So that's how it is." While they were busy gossiping, Yi Fan was already standing in front of a modern building, waving and shouting loudly, "We're here, you two hurry inside." Leading the group inside, the demon guy introduced smugly, "This is our special project laboratory. What do you think? Awesome, right?" Sweeping his gaze around, Fang Zhou couldn't help marveling at the cutting-edge equipment all around. This lab is seriously high-end. The treatment for rare classes truly lives up to its reputation. From the corner of the room, a bespectacled man with a mechanical arm stepped out to greet them. "Hello, kids. I'm the person in charge of the Demon Hunter Research Society, Silver Tier Gale Ranger Chen Qingshan." The two of them politely bowed in greeting. "Hello, Professor Chen." This caused the middle-aged professor to merely nod coldly in response. Although the other party was just a logistics personnel, Fang Zhou acutely sensed a faint murderous aura radiating off him. Even though he was a scientific researcher, that frontline combat vibe still lingered about him. Wandering around the room, Professor Chen proudly recounted a story. Recently in the Abyss Secret Realm, humanity gained yet another Demon Hunter Senior with the crown title who broke through to the legendary tier, successfully slaughtering an Abyss Lord and displaying earth-shattering combat power. Patting Yi Fan's shoulder with high expectations, Professor Chen shared, "That's why after Yi Fan awakened the Demon Hunter class, our Heicheng Military Academy paid special attention to him, setting up an entire specialized research project just to help him unlock his maximum potential." Suddenly, Professor Chen turned to look at Fang Zhou with a mysterious smile. "Fang Zhou, I've also looked over your file." Seeing the kid look somewhat promising, the professor pushed up his glasses and tempted him. "If you like, I can also make a special exception to set up a small research team for you." This caused the male lead to wave his hands and refuse on the spot. "No thanks, I'll pass." Glancing sideways at Yi Fan with lingering dread, the pragmatic Lord of the Dead thought to himself, "I certainly don't want to be saddled with mountains of debt for 20 years after graduation." Professor Chen didn't force the issue either, clapping his hands to signal, "No problem at all. Then let's just start with actual combat research first." Stepping down onto the combat stage, the professor reassured the two students. "We've set up extremely strict safety measures, so you guys can go all out in battle without worrying about life-threatening issues." Pointing toward the weapon rack nearby, he added a reminder. "Additionally, to maximize your combat output, each of you can freely choose 3 combat equipment items from that armory." Looking at Yi Fan, who looked majestic holding a glowing bow blade, Fang Zhou mentally evaluated that Yi Fan's strength was indeed no joke. His speed and burst capability heavily countered his own skeleton summoning skill. Seizing the moment, the male lead decided to activate the system, figuring it was time to use the skill deduction feature to boost his own combat power a bit. Right before his eyes, a brilliant emerald upgrade panel immediately appeared with upgrade choices for skeleton summoning. lower-tier bone javelin, and lower-tier bone shield. Standing on the other side of the arena, Yi Fan stripped off his coat, tossed it onto the rack, and raised his voice in provocation. Oh, almost forgot. Walking over with his specialized weapon in hand, the demon hunter bragged wildly. Recently, I've completely mastered the specialized bowblade weapon skill, so even if you summon 20 skeletons, you still won't be my match. Donning his camouflage cloak over his shoulders, Fang Zhou merely curved his lips into a faint, nonchalant smile. Heh, is that so? However, looking at his newly stat-boosted Necromancer attribute sheet, he thought with absolute confidence. But once all these skills finish upgrading, it's anyone's guess whose bite is worse. Flicking his fingers lightly, the Lord of the Dead wore an enchanting smile. I hope you won't disappoint me. At this point, his attribute sheet displayed basic equipment consisting of an apprentice mage staff and a grey-tier apprentice magical artifact. Although they were mass-produced goods, they still slightly boosted magical efficiency and reduced incoming damage. Yi Fan assumed a defensive stance, spinning his glowing giant bow blade with great majesty. Living up to being the lifelong rival I chose, that confidence of yours is genuinely respectable. Yet the demon hunter's gaze instantly hardened with danger. However, Yi Fan burst into an explosive dash midair, leaping up to deliver a fatal blow down onto the arena. The project team's backing for me far exceeds your imagination. Standing inside the observation room, two research assistants gossiped with curiosity. Who do you think will win? Definitely Yi Fan. You've spent all week interacting with him, so why ask? That guy's combat instinct is the scariest thing I've ever seen. Right at that moment, a warm voice rang out to cut through the conversation. Drawing conclusions in such a rush, aren't you research folks being a bit too hasty? This startled Professor Chen, who spun around. Old Lu, why'd you run over here? Instructor Lu, who crossed his arms beside the big boss and replied indifferently, two of my favorite students in my class are sparring, so as their teacher I naturally had to come take a look. When met with a counter question, what's this? Instructor Lu actually believes Fang Zhou can beat Yi Fan, he asserted with absolute confidence. Precisely. Faced with that confidence, Professor Chen flipped through the stack of files in his hand and shook his head in rebuttal. Fang Zhou can indeed summon a lot of skeletons, but that doesn't change the fact that he's just a mage with a frail physique plus. Professor Chen turned sideways to drop some insider info. Yesterday Yi Fan just comprehended an extremely overpowered movement skill, which is guaranteed to give you a big surprise. This caused Teacher Lu to raise a curious eyebrow. Oh. Back on the arena, Yi Fan lunged like a ghost, his glowing blade slicing past Fang Zhou by a hair's breadth. Thanks to his razor-sharp reflexes, the male lead managed a timely evasive slide while mentally assessing his opponent. Yi Fan's close combat capability is way too strong. I need to quickly widen the distance. Seeing his opponent desperately backing away, Yi Fan laughed arrogantly. Don't think widening the distance makes you safe. He immediately raised his giant bow blade, channeled his power, and fired a barrage of blue energy arrows. They blotted out the sky, sweeping across every single angle. Faced with that torrential offensive, a flash of cold emerald light flickered in Fang Zhou's eyes as he chanted an incantation, summoning a skull-protective barrier that cut off all danger. Fang Zhou raised his magic staff, and instantly a brilliantly glowing magic circle blossomed beneath his feet, summoning his first batch of skeleton warriors into the fray. The moment they appeared, the skeletons clasped their hands before their chests and executed their signature technique, launching sharp blue energy beams in rapid succession. Watching the incoming rays shooting forth like a flood, Yi Fan instantly leaned to dodge while mentally calculating. I need to quickly cut off his skeleton's summoning tempo. But a lightning arrow suddenly slammed straight down into the formation beneath Fang Zhou's feet, making him change expression and cry out. Crap! The summoning array was forcibly interrupted. Bending down low to dodge a storm of energy arrows skimming right over the top of his head, the male lead breathed a sigh of relief. That was close. Right after that, Fang Zhou hastily pressed his hand against the ground, instantly triggering another hidden magic array. A long line of imposing white skeletons with glowing green eyes rumbled up from the earth, completely shielding their master from the next wave of attacks. Standing behind the observation glass, Professor Chen couldn't help marveling in appreciation. Truly, the younger generation surpasses the old. Today's youth are truly formidable. He pushed up his glasses and nodded in agreement. With Fang Zhou's performance today, even if he loses to Yi Fan, I completely agree to put him on the seed list. This made Teacher Lu Hu chuckle and retort, old Chen, don't celebrate too early. With a voice full of confidence, the combat instructor stroked his chin smugly and asserted, this kid Fang Zhou has an extremely steady and shrewd temperament. I don't believe for a second that he didn't hold back 2 or 3 trump cards. Watching his skeleton warriors get chopped down like sugarcane by the opponent, Fang Zhou narrowed his eyes in calculation. Looks like I can't hold back anymore. Thinking and acting simultaneously, he raised his burning skull staff high into the sky and shouted clearly, "Turn on maximum output for me." Watching the on-screen numbers skyrocket, the female assistant dropped her jaw and screamed, "30 skeletons?" This caused her colleague standing next to her to freeze for 5 full seconds. The kid only awakened a few days ago. How the hell did he level up his skill so terrifyingly fast? Even though he was surrounded on all sides by a white sea of bones, Yifan roared with intense excitement. Awesome. Having this kind of capability is what makes you worthy of being my rival. Pulling his camouflage hood up to cover half his face, Fang Zhou watched with cautious evaluation. Surrounded tightly by my skeletons and still that calm. This Yi Fan guy definitely still has hidden tricks up his sleeve. Just as predicted, the Yi surnamed guy instantly transformed into an emerald whirlwind, swinging his scythe to chop down surrounding skulls with a series of brutal maneuvers. No matter how sturdy the white bone warriors were, they couldn't withstand the heat, quickly shattering and turning into scattering dust on the ground. A fighting spirit flared in Yi Fan's emerald-lit eyes as he lunged forward, muttering, "This distance is more than enough to end the match." In the blink of an eye, he closed in right before his opponent, the explosive energy surrounding him acting as if it wanted to swallow the frail mage whole. He activated a killer move called Shadow Chase, transforming into a dark shadow that tore through the air and lunged straight forward. The speed of the dash was so fast it left a prolonged emerald light trail behind, pressing an invisible weight over the entire arena. Witnessing that sight, Professor Chen sighed and declared, "It's over. Once an assassin successfully closes the distance, no matter what kind of mage you are, you can't withstand Yi Fan's attack." Meanwhile, Teacher Lu Hu silently watched without saying a word. With a decisive motion, Yi Fan spun around to deliver a slash, a decisive move named Vengeance Fierce Strike, straight into Fang Zhou's bull's. Yet the corners of the disguised mastermind Fang Zhou's mouth curved into a sly, wicked smile as he whispered with triumph, "The fish has bitten the hook, my boy." A gigantic bone shield abruptly erected right in front of him, blocking Yi Fan's thunderous slash accompanied by a resounding metallic clash. Blasted backward by the immense reactive force from the shield, Yi Fan widened his eyes in horror and screamed, "What the hell is this? What kind of skill is this?" Gazing through the surveillance screen, Professor Chen startled and cried out, This is a brand new skill of the Necromancer class." This left the assistant standing beside him with shattered nerves. He figured out a skill entirely on his own. This is way too absurd. Fang Zhou slowly retreated backward, casually dropping a mocking remark. "Sorry about that. You're a bit stronger than I thought, so I had to resort to a little strategy." The moment he finished speaking, he loosened his grip, letting his skull staff drop freely onto the cold tiled floor. Watching that bizarre action from the male lead, Professor Chen broke out in a cold sweat, his face draining of all color as he stammered, "What kind of trick is this?" Teacher Lu Hu broke out in a cold sweat, clicking his tongue in admiration. "This kid. His tactical playstyle is seriously dirty." Right at that moment, Professor Chen also figured it out, widening his eyes and yelling. He actually used optical camouflage to infiltrate directly inside the skeletons. Amidst the dense, overlapping white bone formation, Yi Fan looked around frantically, gritting his teeth in frustration. "Damn it, I completely can't detect where Fang Zhou's main body is hiding." While frantically swinging his scythe to hack wildly at the minions around him, he roared helplessly, "Fang Zhou, if you've got guts, step out here." However, feeling his stamina rapidly depleting, a fierce green flame burned within the demon hunter's eyes as he gritted his teeth and decided, "If this drags on, I'm going to get worn down to death. I'll have to use that ultimate move." An enormous wave of evil aura abruptly exploded, shooting straight up into the air and blasting the surrounding closing skeletons far away. Witnessing that terrifying sight, Professor Chen jumped in shock, unable to believe his eyes. How is that possible? At this level, he's already learned that overpowered move. This caused the assistant to nod and explain, "Exactly. Although its cooldown is extremely long, it packs an insane burst damage output and the ability to instantly exit combat status." Hovering in midair, Yi Fan's glowing eyes instantly locked onto a corner within the skeleton formation, and he cried out triumphantly, "Found it, it's that one." Raising his burning twin blades high to prepare a fatal finishing blow, the demon hunter roared with excitement. "Fang Zhou, take this blow of mine, World Destruction Strike." Pumping his final remaining strength, Yi Fan ignited the green flame deep within his eyes as he prepared to deliver the deciding blow. A gigantic emerald fireball carrying destructive power plunged straight down toward the squad of skeletons looking up. A skeleton warrior wearing a camouflage cloak broke out in a cold sweat upon realizing that the Grim Reaper was calling its name directly. The thunderous blow slammed hard down onto the arena floor, creating a terrifying emerald explosion accompanied by the shouted name of the technique, Sky Slash. As the dust slowly cleared, Yi Fan lowered his head, panting heavily as he stared fixedly at the target lying flat on the ground. Standing tall atop the opponent's corpse, the red-haired guy propped his weapon and declared proudly, "You're strong, but my Yi Fan has his own pride and absolutely cannot lose." Assuming the look of a benevolent victor, he turned his head to instruct, "Hurry up and call the medical team. I don't want to cause any fatalities." Yet outside the observation room, Professor Chen and the rest of the group froze, widening their eyes in shock. Realizing something was off with the atmosphere, Yi Fan broke out in a cold sweat and muttered, "Their expressions are so weird. Those aren't the eyes meant for a victor." He hastily spun his head back to look down at the ground, blurting out in utter disbelief, "Beneath the cloak." Fang Zhou began smoking and dissolved into thin air beneath the cloak, making him realize the bitter truth in panic. That wasn't Fang Zhou. His brain raced continuously, patching the situation together with a convoluted deduction. Chest camouflage plus double camouflage. He didn't disguise himself as a skeleton, he made a skeleton disguise itself as him disguising himself as a skeleton. Before he could even digest this spectacular trick, he cried out in panic as a swarm of bones grabbed tightly onto his legs from behind. Oh no. Fang Zhou's actual, real main body leisurely emerged right behind his back at that exact moment, smiling warmly. "Yi Fan, thanks for letting me win." Knowing he had fallen into a trap, Yi Fan lowered his head in resignation and said, "I surrender," while the system simultaneously displayed the result. Fang Chu wins. The red-haired guy gritted his teeth and closed his eyes in utter helplessness, thinking, "Damn it, that final skill consumed way too much. I don't have an ounce of strength left." Exhausted completely, his body collapsed forward and was caught by none other than one of his opponent's skeleton minions, extending a hand to steady him. Though suffering a bitter defeat, he still maintained his manners as he wheezed at the protagonist. "Thanks." Fang Chu immediately gave a thumbs up and offered comfort laced heavily with mockery. "You're welcome, just think of it as my pity for the loser." Being carried away on a stretcher, Yi Fan angrily yelled back, "You bastard, this defeat is just fuel to make me stronger. Just you wait, the underdog will rise up someday," prompting Fang Chu to hastily cover himself. "I was just joking, no need to get so worked up, right?" As the match concluded, Professor Chen stepped forward with words of praise. "I hate to admit it, student Fang Chu, but your combat capability has far exceeded my expectations." Leading the male protagonist to calmly reply, Professor Chen. The bespectacled teacher patted the male protagonist's shoulder and delivered a blunt verdict. "With a dirty tactic like yours, you'll definitely become a tactical master in the future." Leaving him speechless as he thought, "Why do I feel like the teacher isn't praising me?" Brushing aside the comedy skit, Lu Hu put on a serious face and got straight to the point. "Fang Chu, that shield spell you used earlier, was it a new skill you comprehended on your own?" And the male protagonist calmly confirmed, "Yes, teacher Lu Hu." Without hiding anything, the male protagonist immediately summoned the bone shield and spear to demonstrate, saying, "I had some enlightenment while practicing skeleton summons and comprehended two new skills," proudly adding, "I named them Bone Spear and Bone Shield." Gazing at the two distinct masterpieces right before their eyes, both teachers stood stunned, speechless as they looked at each other. Lu Hu excitedly gave a hard smack on his student's back, shouting, "Well done, kid, you really know how to surprise us," causing Fang Chu to wobble and grimace as he begged, "Teacher, please go a bit easier." Professor Chen turned to suggest to his colleague, Brother Kingshan, "Since your place already has professional equipment ready, why don't we test Fang Chu's new skills right now?" And Lu Hu readily and cheerfully agreed, "No problem, I'll go arrange it right away." Hearing about a test, Fang Chu instantly trembled and collapsed to wail, "Teacher, my spiritual power is truly depleted. I'm afraid I can't test these two skills." While the burly teacher threw an arm around him in comfort. "Oh, it's just a small matter, nothing to worry about at all." A whole pile of huge potions was brought out before him, leaving the male protagonist to ask blankly, "Wait, did you bring a whole case of beer here?" To which the teacher cheerfully replied, "Spot on, just chug it straight from the bottle," while the label on the crate clearly stated the truth. Mental recovery. Supplied industrially for the first time, Fang Chu turned the bottle upside down and chugged it dry, causing green energy to radiate brilliantly around him as he muttered, "This is the first time I've seen someone drink recovery potion like tap water. Ah, so refreshing." Stepping into the testing area, Professor Chen pointed toward the training robot and shouted, "Get ready, we'll start the test right now, the dummy is ready," causing Fang Chu to obediently nod, "Understood." The robot raised both fists with a sinister smile while the supervisor's voice echoed, "Just do like in the actual combat class, attack it with your skill." And the cold student replied, "Understood." Without further hesitation, Fang Chu waved his hand to summon his sharp weapon along with shouting out the move name, Bone Spear. Putting force into it, he fiercely hurled the penetrating spear into the dummy, creating a dazzling explosion of light as the electronic board instantly reported the result. Attack power 85. Witnessing the impressive number, Professor Chen smiled brightly, taking continuous notes and praising, "Such high attack power. For a newly awakened student, this level is truly exceptional, and most importantly, this is a skill created entirely by himself. Seeing that the offensive strike was done, Lu Hu stroked his beard and commanded next. Get ready, next we'll test the defensive capability of your skill. To which the male protagonist shrugged lightly and replied, sure. Receiving the command, the doll demon robot rushed forward at high speed, dealing a 1,000-pound punch straight to the male protagonist's face. Faster than lightning, Fang Chu abruptly erected the skull shield to block the devastating blow. Bone shield, and the electronic board instantly updated its score assessment, defense power 80. The two brilliant numbers made Lu Hu split his mouth in a wide grin as he showered his student with praise. Attack power rivals a storm mage, while defense is no less than an earth knight. Overzealous over the talent, the teacher unleashed his ultimate backslapping combo on the male protagonist, nearly choking him out as he cried out, Fang Chu, you were simply born to be a necromancer. While the male protagonist massaged his face like a monkey eating ginger and pleaded, teacher, can you stop patting me? People might start thinking taking hits like this is easy. Professor Chen stepped forward to bail out the pitiful student, pushing his glasses up as he proposed, Student Fang Chu, the skills you've comprehended are extraordinarily brilliant. I suggest you register them in the skill library. Leaving Fang Chu to rub his back and mutter in curiosity, skill library. He began rummaging through his memories and system information regarding this luxurious sanctuary. The so-called skill library was a skill collection center established by the Federation where anyone could spend contribution points to exchange for skills. Professor Chen's voice pulled him back to reality along with a heart sign from a thumb. We have an entire branch of the Federation skill library right here in this research institute. You can use it anytime. And the male protagonist smiled slyly and seized the opportunity. Then I'll have to trouble you, teacher. Standing before the gigantic wooden door, Lu Hu earnestly instructed his favored student. After uploading your skills, you can use the contribution points you currently have to exchange for the skills you need. And Fang Chu strode forward confidently. I understand, thank you, teacher Lu. He reached out with his black-gloved arm, gently placed it on the heavy wooden door, and pushed it wide open to step into the world of knowledge. However, a quiet darkness greeted him instead, leaving the young man to blink and complain, isn't this the skill library? Why is it pitch black? No sooner had he spoken than the lighting system suddenly flashed on, illuminating a gorgeous and antique space of knowledge before his eyes. Gazing at the towering bookshelves gleaming with golden light, the male protagonist couldn't help but sigh in awe, just as expected of the Federation skill library. He walked along the corridors, gently caressing the magical book spines as he muttered with keen interest, every skill I know can be found right here. Skipping the sightseeing, he approached the central stone pedestal, placed his hand upon the vibrant purple energy orb and began operating it. A series of system notifications popped up with earth-shattering good news. Successfully registered new skills Bone Spear and Bone Shield, rewarded 200 contribution points. As the developer of these new skills, 50% of all future exchange fees will become your personal income, leaving the young man in deep shock at the massive payout. I actually managed to get royalty earnings too. Pockets stuffed with a colossal fortune, the male protagonist's inner greed flared up to go hunt for cheat books, thinking that it was rare to get into the skill library, and he couldn't just exchange a few skills and walk away empty-handed. Strolling around for a round, his sharp gaze instantly locked onto a book glowing with emerald light as he reached out and grabbed it. Skeleton Meditation Method. Holding the fiercely glowing cheat book in his hand, he smirked with calculated intent. Perfect, I'll use these skills as the original template to complete even more skill deductions, while the system display simultaneously showed his balance of soul strength available for skill deduction. 100 points. Standing in the vast space, Fang Chu suddenly received a prompt from the skill system that the skeleton meditation method could be upgraded by consuming soul strength. Without needing to think twice, he waved his hand and decisively clicked on the choice button. Yes. Instantly, an aura of green light engulfed his body, prompting him to sigh in admiration. Such an intense aura of death. Simultaneously, within his sea of consciousness, a skeleton illusion abruptly flung open its eyes, blazing with an intense crimson glare. Manifesting before his eyes was the silhouette of a majestic skeleton king seated upon a throne, accompanied by a system notification announcing the successful upgrade of the skeleton meditation method. That bony king slowly extended a mysterious magic book, leaving Fang Chu to mutter in curiosity, "This is." Staring at the magic book floating before him, the male protagonist pointed at himself in bewilderment and asked, "For me?" Without waiting for his consent, the book automatically flew open, releasing thousands of glowing magic runes that fluttered around and zipped straight into his body. After absorbing the entire essence, the image of a majestic skeleton monarch appeared behind Fang Chu's back alongside the grand ultimate skill title. Skeleton Monarch Meditation Method. Clenching his fists in satisfaction, the male protagonist muttered to himself that this burst of strength wasn't wasted at all as he read the system notification. Skeleton Monarch Meditation Method, an upgraded version of the Skeleton Meditation Method, increases meditation speed by 100% compared to the original and empowers all necromancy skills. Not only does it boost leveling speed, but it also enhances skill intensity. This soul strength was truly not wasted. However, he quickly tapped a finger against his chin in calculation, realizing a harsh reality. No matter how powerful a skill was, it still required a corresponding amount of mental power to cast. And in his previous battle with Yi Fan, his mental power had almost been completely drained. Strolling through the library, he breathed a sigh of relief and decided to go buy a mana pump spell right away, thinking that since he still had plenty of contribution points, he could exchange for a skill that helped boost mental power. Stopping in front of a bookshelf, he stylishly pointed at his target to lock in the purchase. "I choose calm mind and steady spirit," accompanied by a clear deduction notice popping up. Fang Chu has consumed 20 contribution points, skill successfully exchanged. He contentedly flipped through the cheat book and reviewed the effects of the newly acquired ultimate technique. This skill provides a passive boost increasing the mental power recovery rate for spellcasters. And when used actively, it also instantly restores a specified amount of mental power. Greeting the tempting system prompt, he smirked at the high learning difficulty and decisively clicked yes. The only downside of calm mind and steady spirit is its extremely high learning difficulty. But for him, that's entirely no obstacle. Skill material detected available for learning, consuming 10 points of soul strength to accelerate the comprehension process. Truly, money can buy anything. A series of magical light rays instantly wrapped around his body alongside a joyful system notification. The skill Calm Mind and Steady Spirit has reached the entry level. Clenching his surging hand into a fist, he smiled smugly and praised, "Awesome, my mental power recovery speed has noticeably increased." With his new skill set, Fang Chu's self-confidence swelled to the point of absolute conviction. If he had to fight Yi Fan right now, he could probably effortlessly drown the guy in a sea of skeletons. Not stopping there, the newly rich phony hugged a stack of books as reference materials alongside point deduction alerts. Vangling Vines, Mud Wall Puddle, Spiderweb Weakening Ray, thinking he should exchange for these skills first and use them as reference materials to upgrade future skills. The skills were successfully exchanged. After shopping to his heart's content, he suddenly realized the harsh truth that no matter how high your martial arts are, going naked means you're finished, and skills alone aren't enough. He needed proper equipment to match his strength, seeing as a low-tier apprentice could only use gray and white tier gear anyway. Desperation breeds thieves, but here he had money. The young man waved his hand to swipe his card and buy gear instantly. Fang Chu has consumed 40 contribution points, equipment successfully exchanged. Draped in total market tier trash gear, Fang Chu adjusted the brim of his hat to transform into a low-rent peasant mage, though his aura remained sky-high thanks to a series of notifications. Low-tier gray apprentice mage hat, a mass-produced standard mage hat slightly increases maximum mental limit. Low-tier gray apprentice necklace, a mass-produced standard necklace, slightly increases mental recovery rate. Low-tier gray apprentice ring X2, mass-produced standard rings slightly reduce skill cooldown times. Trash is trash, but gathering all 4 pieces triggered a gorgeous high-tier bonus effect shining brightly on the system interface. Apprentice Mage 4-piece set effect, cultivation speed and skill proficiency growth rate increased by 10%. Gazing at the upgrade light wrapping around his body, the young man nodded with a charming smile and concluded, "Not bad, this thing will help me level up even faster." Standing in the middle of the library and reviewing his ultra-long stats summary panel, Fang Chu muttered in praise that this trip yielded massive gains, as the Federation skill library was truly extraordinary. Fang Chu Low-Tier Apprentice Necromancer class, Strength Stat 1.5, Agility 1.3, Constitution 1.3, Spirit 2.5, Soul Separation State, Apprentice Mage 4-piece set equipped, Skeleton Meditation Method mastered, Summon Skeleton upgradable and mastered, Bone Spear proficient, Bone Shield proficient, Calm Mind and Steady Spirit entry level. Suddenly his cool skeleton clone Big Bro dashed out with a swish, drawing the male protagonist's attention over. Fang Chu broke out in cold sweat, clicking his tongue in realization that he almost completely forgot about his minion, thinking, "I almost forgot. My skeleton clone needs corresponding skills too." Without sparing expenses for his house pet, he immediately pulled out 3 crucial cheat books and threw them to his minion alongside deduction alerts. Weapon Mastery, Parry, and Roar were 3 absolute must-have skills for his skeleton clone. Fang Chu has consumed 30 contribution points, skills successfully exchanged. Hugging the final cheat book, the fake tycoon Fang Chu started sweating as he saw his wallet hit rock bottom, racking his brain for a lucrative gig. The skill library is amazing, but it's definitely not friendly to my contribution points at all. I wonder if I can find another sweet job like being a training partner. Just as he stepped out to the area marked with the Demon Hunter Research Group sign, he bumped right into Professor Chen, who asked in curiosity, "How is it? Did you manage to learn any new skills?" Prompting Fang Chu to puff out his chest and boast, "Yes, I got a massive haul this time." Just as he was feeling smug, an infuriated roar echoed from behind, interrupting his thoughts. "Fang Chu, I refuse to accept that defeat." The belligerent Yi Fan stood on the platform and directly hurled a recovery potion bottle at the male protagonist with a challenge. "Drink this potion. I lost earlier just because I didn't understand your tactics. This time I'll defeat you at full speed," causing Fang Chu to catch the bottle smoothly and smile mockingly. "Are you sure you want to challenge me right now? I actually just upgraded my skills." Brushing off the advice, the red-haired guy gritted his teeth and stated with blazing eyes, "I, Yi Fan, will never submit to anyone. This time I'll use my full strength to defeat you." Hearing a lucrative opportunity walk right up to his mouth, Lu Hu cleverly raised a finger to charge a fee. "This counts as an extra training session, so the student will have to pay me extra contribution points." And Professor Chen immediately deflected the responsibility to the debtor. "Oh, as long as he agrees, anyway he's the one who will have to pay back those points later." Refusing to drink, Fang Chu tossed the potion bottle back to his opponent with a provocative smile. "Then bring it on, keep the potion to yourself. You might be the one needing it soon," driving Yi Fan mad with rage as he growled, "You." Provoked to the boiling point, the red-haired guy erupted with a green flame engulfing his entire body and rushed forward, roaring, "Fang Chu." The scene darkened as a green beam carrying an ultimate technique slashed through the air from above with overwhelming killing intent. Ultimate Heavenly Strike. Observing from the sidelines, Professor Chen and Teacher Lu broke out in cold sweat analyzing the situation. He opened with his ultimate technique right away. Yi Fan's combat instincts are quite sharp. A blitz battle is his only chance to win. A tense atmosphere blanketed the area as the teacher focused intently and muttered, "I wonder how Fang Chu will respond with his new skills." Contrary to everyone's anxiety, the male protagonist leisurely raised a finger to the sky, instantly causing a gigantic green magic circle filled with glowing runes to light up beneath his feet. Seeing the familiar summoning spectacle, the pretty female assistant blinked in bewilderment and blurted out, "Is he still just using summon skeleton?" But with his seasoned eyes, the bearded teacher Lu's expression shifted drastically as he broke out in a cold sweat and shouted, "No, wait." The luminous ring grew increasingly brilliant, revealing countless dense skeleton phantoms, causing teacher Lu to gasp in terror. That number. Dozens of white skeleton warriors surged tumultuously from the ground, forming an imposing pillar piercing the sky alongside the shocked exclamation of onlookers. "This is completely abnormal." Yi Fan's ultimate technique crashed down hard against the solid wall of skeletons, creating a dazzling explosion of green light that blasted rocks and bone splinters flying everywhere in a messy spray. Dust filled the entire arena as Professor Chen and Teacher Lu stared in shock, reassessing the red-haired guy's combat power. His strength is even greater than before. That brat Yi Fan actually truly comprehended and upgraded his skills right during our previous battle. Right at that moment, Fang Chu walked over gently, commenting, "Not bad, the power behind this attack is noticeably stronger than before," while casually shoving his hands into his pants pockets and smiling with profound implication. "But what a pity my skills have also become stronger, just a tiny bit," making Yi Fan jump in shock and roar, "Fang Chu." Before he could finish his sentence, the red-haired guy broke out in a cold sweat of terror upon realizing that the 7 skeletons around him were simultaneously pointing their razor-sharp spears straight at him. So instead of a heroic battle, the surnamed Yi guy got swarmed and brutally jumped by the horde of skeletons, crying out in desperate, miserable plea, "No, don't hit the face." The match concluded with the image of Yi Fan sprawled flat on the floor. Professor Chen could only clutch his forehead and sigh an announcement, "Today's training session ends here," while Teacher Lu next to him chimed in with resignation, "Geez, Yi Fan probably won't be able to train for the next week." Waiting until people carted the victim away, Professor Chen turned to ask the male protagonist seriously, "By the way, are you really not planning to establish a necromancer research group?" To which Fang Chu flatly refused right away. "Oh no, thank you, teacher." Recalling his mountain of explosive secrets, the young man broke out in a cold sweat as he thought to himself, "If they research me and find out I have a system, that would be extremely troublesome." Simultaneously, at another corner of the skill library, a gorgeous young maiden stepped into the central pedestal and suddenly noticed an unusual change. HMPH. Placing her hand upon the magic orb, the girl widened her eyes in astonishment, wondering, have new necromancer skills really been added to the database? Without hesitation, she swiped her card to make the purchase instantly, triggering a system notification. Su Xinhian has consumed 20 contribution points, skill successfully exchanged. Flipping through the cheat book page by page, Su Xinhian read along while failing to hide her awe. Bone spear, bone shield. I never expected bone-type magic could be used this way. Whoever developed these skills is definitely an absolute genius. Having picked up a treasure, the girl excitedly hugged the book and hurried off to show off thinking, I have to tell my dad about this. At the exact same time in the principal's office, Professor Chen slammed his desk and pleaded, Principal, I must resubmit the application to add Fang Chu to the seed list. And the bearded teacher Lu also nodded in guarantee, that's right, I can stake my honor to vouch for him as well. The white-haired old principal calmly took a sip of tea, furrowing his brow to scold, Old Chen, why are you going along with this nonsense? Even though that necromancer is doing very well right now, in the future he won't have enough skills to learn and keep up with his level. Refusing to give up, Professor Chen raised his voice in a rebuttal that gave his old friend a physical shock. He might have already independently comprehended 2 necromancer skills by himself right now. Hastily wiping his mouth, the old principal recovered his dignified demeanor to save face. Comprehending new skills is nothing. What matters is the effectiveness of those skills. And Teacher Lu eagerly jumped in to report, his skill intensity is. Right at that moment, the office door flew open, and Su Xinhian rushed in to interrupt the conversation with an excited tone. Dad, 2 new necromancer skills just appeared in the skill library. Hearing his precious daughter say that, the old principal frowned in bewilderment and asked, Necromancer skills. To prove it, she cast 2 green skills right into the middle of the room as an illustration. I've only briefly studied them, and although I haven't fully mastered them yet, their effectiveness is truly extraordinary. Witnessing the terrifying power right before his eyes, the old principal stood frozen, sweat beading heavily on his forehead while his daughter curiously asked, Dad, do you know who developed these skills? Well, Before her father could finish his sentence, Su Xinhian's eyes were already sparkling with stars as she harbored a grand dream. I want to become that person's student. The old principal stared at the ceiling, letting out a helpless sigh as he directly poured cold water on his daughter's face. Xinhian, I'm afraid you won't be able to do that, causing her to pout in grievance and ask, why not? Returning to the practical classroom, the legitimate reason was explained through the principal's echoing voice. Because he is still just a student. At this moment in the classroom, Fang Chu was dozing off soundly when he was awakened by a provocative voice. My mortal enemy, come out and fight me. He wearily raised his head and replied in boredom again. Resting his chin on his hand, the male protagonist sighed as he looked at the clingy pest before him. How many times have you challenged me already? Don't you need to cultivate and improve your strength? Yifan shoved his hands into his jacket pockets, smirked, and declared with confidence to the female companion beside him, Heh, this time will be different, leaving the girl by Xiaoxian startled and blank. HMPH. The surnamed Yigai threw an arm around his female companion, tossing his chin toward the male protagonist to pitch the duel. Over the past few days, thanks to Bai Xiaoxian's help, my strength has surged by leaps and bounds. This time I will definitely defeat you, prompting the girl beside him to turn bright red in panic as she clarified. You literally knelt down and begged me in public, okay? I only agreed to avoid causing a misunderstanding. Shrugging off the comedy skit, Fang Chu blinked in curiosity and asked, helped you increase your strength? While Bai Xiaoxian crossed her arms and puffed out her chest, proudly boasting, that's right, while sleeping a few days ago, I comprehended a super useful support skill called lullaby. The girl cheerfully explained its miraculous utility further. It helps accelerate mental power recovery while boosting the effectiveness of meditation or training. Seeing his teammate steal the spotlight, Yifan slammed the table to interrupt with an exasperated yet determined expression. However, this skill can only be used 3 times a day. I had to spend 2 contribution points a week just to get this chance. Looking at the overly enthusiastic debtor, Fang Chu secretly sighed in weariness. Is this guy planning to spend the rest of his life just grinding to pay off his debt? While the red-haired guy banged the table to urge him on. Hurry up, I'm confident I can beat you this time. Instead of bothering with the provocation, the male protagonist poured all his attention into that fancy-sounding new skill. But if it boosts meditation and training effectiveness, I wonder if it works on my skeleton clone. Thinking his doing, he lunged forward, reaching out to grab by Xiaoxian's shoulder with terrifying enthusiasm. Xiaoxian, can you sell me your last lullaby use for today? Causing her to blush and nod in confusion. I guess so. While the surnamed Yigai furiously yelled out for being left out. Hey, don't ignore me. Without bothering to acknowledge the loser, Fang Chu waved his hand to cast a spell and summon his minion to clean up the yard. Summon skeleton. Leaving the pack of skeletons to surround Yifan, Boss Fang nonchalantly assigned the task. You can play with these bones first. Remember to transfer the contribution points to me when you're done. Driving the red-haired guy to gnash his teeth and curse, you bastard, how dare you look down on me like this? Processing the noisy debtor, the male protagonist turned to his female classmate with an intensely anticipatory look. Please cast lullaby on me, and received an obedient agreement. Alright. Oxyan closed her eyes to chant a spell, instantly causing glowing ribbons of sound to flutter and wrap around the male protagonist. Lullaby. At the same time, in a dark and deadly space called the Nether Realm, the big bro skeleton clone was sitting cross-legged in meditation. The musical ribbons from the real world actually crossed dimensions to wrap around the skeleton king, causing Fang Chu to nod smugly as he confirmed on the system panel. Flawless lullaby state. The effect of lullaby actually works on my skeleton clone. Rising with an overpowering demeanor, the skeleton monarch looked toward the horde of monsters and muttered in calculation, I can use you guys to test this clone's skill effects. While a top-tier stat sheet manifested clearly. Apprentice-tier high-rank skeleton clone, strength stat 8, constitution 7, agility 7, spirit 6, equipped with low-tier gray bone spear skills. Skeleton armament, brutal instinct, strike mastered, charge mastered, weapon mastery mastered, parry mastered, roar mastered, soul strength 50. The foolish mobs roared as they charged forward, wielding jagged weapons to smash down toward the skeleton king's head. With a movement faster than lightning, the skeleton clone drew its weapon in preparation. Bone Spear. The steel spear deflected the monster's 1,000-pound strike with the masterclass skill parry and redirect, while the system detailed the breakdown. Apprentice-tier parry mastered, enter defensive stance to deflect the next incoming attack and reduce received damage. Success rate and damage reduction depend on constitution stat and skill proficiency. Riding the momentum of victory, the green flame in the clone's eye sockets burned fiercely as it prepared to counterattack. Weapon Mastery. The skeleton monarch swung its spear to deal a fatal blow, smashing the bulky monster deep into the burning red ground. Not stopping there, the clone immediately spun around to lock its target onto another incoming enemy. The monster growled as it brought a gigantic axe crashing down with the intent to split the white skeleton in half. Exploiting the opening, the clone leaned slightly to the side and thrust the sharp spearhead straight through the unfortunate monster's skull. Counterthrust. Standing majestically amidst the battlefield, the clone nodded approvingly upon seeing the buff pop up, nodding that even the system rewards were increased by 10%. This lullaby was truly a god-tier skill. Strength plus 0.11, soul strength plus 0.55. The battle wasn't over yet as two fat executioner monsters clutching weapons rushed madly toward the skeleton king. With overwhelming agility, the skeleton clone executed extraordinary evasive maneuvers and swung its spear to unleash a lightning-fast, powerful slash. The spear pierced straight through the enemy's defense line, triggering a continuous rain of rewards. Strength plus 0.11, soul strength plus 0.55. Gazing toward the distant mountains, the skeleton monarch propped up its spear and stood straight as countless dark shadows swarmed in. There's still an entire undead legion left. In that case, burning away all the death energy within its body, the clone spread its arms wide and delivered an UTTERLY Chinese letter I level provocation. Bring it on, all you scum. An explosive shockwave of power burst forth violently, forming a blinding white halo that shook the entire land of death. The wide area crowd control skill caused the mobs to scatter in terror, alongside a detailed system prompt. System, Apprentice-tier roar mastered, let out a mighty roar to temporarily boost constitution and agility stats. Duration and stat increase scale with strength stat and skill proficiency. Burning with high morale, the clone transformed into a genuine killing machine, charging straight into the enemy formation and cutting them down like grass. Strength plus 0.11, soul strength plus 0.55. Fighting with growing fervor, the green flame burned as tall as a torch while the skeleton king raised its head to the sky and roared. I can still become even stronger. Amidst the frenzy of slaughter, the clone abruptly halted, lifting its blazing eyes to look up at the cracking crimson sky. HMPH. The sky cracked open, revealing a terrifying anomaly that even forced the monarch to drop its bony jaw in shock. What on earth is this? From a spatial rift, a gigantic bone greatsword carrying a blinding blue light plummeted straight down toward the ground. The silhouette of a skeletal angel with evil wings dominated the sky, crushing everything around it and making the skeletal avatar break out in a cold sweat of terror. A skeletal angel, a boss monster actually dropping straight into the rookie zone. The skeletal angel plunged down from the sky, swinging its gigantic greatsword directly at the skeletal avatar. The massive greatsword slammed hard into the ground as the avatar instantly rolled back to dodge. Ducking behind a boulder while darkness continuously gathered around his body, he thought, if I take that hit head-on, I'm definitely dead. Seeing the gigantic greatsword stuck in the ground, the skeletal avatar instantly leaped forward. Since defense is completely useless, I'll go on the offensive. The avatar's eyes flared with a fierce blue light as he activated Shout, channeled power into his bone spear, and lunged straight up into the air. Take this. Roaring out, the skeletal avatar used an armor-piercing thrust to stab viciously into the skeletal angel's shoulder. A green energy icon flashed, strike. Activating the strike skill, the avatar roared again, continuously swinging his spear to pummel the skeletal angel with powerful blows. Faced with the relentless combo, the skeletal angel's massive form was driven backward. The skeletal avatar watched it warily, wondering, what is it planning to do next? The skeletal angel abruptly raised its gigantic bony hand and slammed it hard onto the ground, startling the skeletal avatar with its decisiveness. Right after that, the skeletal angel swung its greatsword horizontally at the avatar. The avatar immediately activated parry, using his weapon to block the greatsword. But the terrifying impact sent him sliding across the stone floor. A gigantic blue energy explosion surged upward from the ground. The skeletal angel slowly paced toward the recovering avatar. The avatar thought to himself, good thing I broke one of its arms earlier, otherwise that hit definitely would have shattered all my bones. But at the same time, the skeletal angel's weakness had also been exposed. A blue soul fire was still burning fiercely on its broken bone arm. The skeletal angel raised its greatsword with its remaining arm. The skeletal avatar turned wary, wondering, what's it up to now? The skeletal angel began spinning at extreme speed, turning into a gigantic emerald whirlwind. The avatar watched the scene in terror. This is bad. The skeletal angel kept spinning, kicking up a terrifying green energy cyclone. Witnessing the vortex power strong enough to grind down a mountain, the skeletal avatar suddenly understood. It's using the centrifugal force of the spin to make up for the lost strength of its arm. With a single spinning strike, the mountain ahead was crushed to dust. A targeting reticle appeared as the green cyclone rushed straight toward the avatar. Not only that, while spinning, it completely has no way to aim precisely at the weakness. Backed against the sheer cliff face with nowhere left to run, the skeletal avatar couldn't help wondering, where on earth do these bones get such an insane desire to fight? Realizing he had reached a dead end, the avatar stared at the incoming blade wind and tightened his grip on his bone staff. No other choice, I'll just have to risk it all. The fierce emerald blade wind swept across the ground. The avatar observed its terrifying power. Just the blade wind alone is enough to scrape away bones and tear flesh. Right at that moment, the avatar spotted an opening. Charge. He immediately lunged forward amidst a stream of blue energy and delivered a strike straight into the skeletal angel's leg. Crack, the giant bone leg instantly shattered. The skeletal avatar scoffed, such a huge body and you've got osteoporosis. Go back and take some calcium supplements. The skeletal angel's chest opened up, exposing a blue soul core inside. The avatar instantly realized, the soul core is exposed, this is the best chance. He immediately hurled multiple bone javelins toward the exposed soul core. The skeletal angel lowered its head in horror, watching the incoming attack. It instantly folded its giant wings to block the bone javelins. Afterward, the skeletal angel flapped its wings hard and soared straight up into the sky. The skeletal avatar immediately understood, I knew it, those wings couldn't just be for show. The skeletal angel raised its greatsword high, as a brilliantly glowing energy orb began to form. The skeletal avatar stood firm, preparing for battle. Too bad my system isn't just for show either. A system notification popped up, initiating skill derivation and fusion between web and bone armament. A system sound rang out. Derivation successful. New skill, Bone Shackles Apprentice Tier proficient, can condense death chi into sturdy bone chains to bind enemies. The strength, duration, and cast range of the binding effect depend on the spirit stat and skill proficiency. The skeletal avatar smiled as an emerald bone shackles icon appeared in his hand. Very nice. Just as I guessed, the skill derivation can fuse traits from other skill trees to create more powerful necromancer abilities. The skeletal angel raised its greatsword, preparing to unleash a downward strike from the sky. The skeletal avatar pointed two fingers forward, mocking, really love flying around in the sky, huh? Suddenly, gigantic blue chains burst forth from the ground, wrapping tightly around the skeletal angel. The skeletal avatar gripped the glowing chains and pulled them taut with all his might. Bone Shackles, get down here. Yanked hard by the chains, the skeletal angel's massive form lost balance and crashed straight down onto the ground. Bound tightly by the heavy chains, the skeletal angel struggled furiously. The skeletal avatar said coldly, don't bother struggling. The more you struggle, the more excited I get. Standing tall with his staff gripped tight while blue death chi burned violently, a massive wave of energy descended. The skeletal avatar delivered the finishing blow to the skeletal angel as a terrifying column of energy pierced straight into the ground. Standing atop a boulder, the avatar held the skeletal angel's blue soul fire in his hand. I gladly accept. The blue soul fire was instantly sucked into the glowing gem on the avatar's armor. The system panel popped up, soul power increased by 100 points. The skeletal avatar was astonished. It actually boosted my soul power by this much. But he quickly noticed something odd. Why is my body still not growing? A new system notification appeared. Basic attributes have reached racial limit, cannot increase attributes further. The skeletal avatar instantly understood. No wonder I couldn't keep raising my stats. He looked up at the vast, desolate red sky. What on earth is up there beyond that sky? I want to see it. A racial evolution system panel appeared. Current race, apprentice skeleton. Evolution choice, black iron tier skeleton warrior. Estimated consumption, 100 soul power points. The skeletal avatar immediately hit confirm. A swirling black energy vortex enveloped his entire body. My path of evolution officially begins right here. The skeletal avatar's face was instantly swallowed by fierce blue and black flames. The path of slaughter drove the evolution process forward as the avatar roared. Evolution successful, successfully evolved into skeleton warrior. After evolving his basic attributes, strength, constitution, agility, and spirit, all increased by 30 points. At the same time, the skeletal avatar unlocked a new racial trait, Skeleton Monarch. This trait granted a special effect. Increased damage dealt to skeletons while reducing incoming damage from them. The skeletal avatar realized instantly, this trait is right on the money for grinding levels fast in the land of the dead. Nearby, a low-tier skeleton was sneaking closer. The avatar stood still, letting the tiny skeleton approach. The low-tier skeleton swung its hand and slapped the avatar directly on the head, but the blow had virtually zero effect. The skeletal avatar confirmed his insane damage reduction. Looks like I don't need to bother defending against weak skeletons anymore. A new system notification popped up, allowing him to upgrade bone armament post-evolution. The avatar immediately selected Confirm. Blue energy flooded the air as the equipment upgrade process began. The system confirmed the upgrade was complete, unlocked common white-tier bone armor. The bone armor instantly fused with his body. The avatar clearly felt his strength and defensive capabilities increase significantly. Once his stats and equipment were all upgraded, the skeletal avatar turned his glowing blue eyes toward his target. Sorry about this. He walked over and used the pitiful skeleton as a practice dummy. The skeletal avatar unleashed a powerful punch, sending a shockwave shooting straight forward. The weak skeleton clutched its head, panicking over what was happening. Boom, an explosion erupted, completely crushing the surrounding skeletons. The avatar walked through the debris, evaluating as he went. Combining hand-to-hand combat with bone armor really jacks up the damage dealt to skeletons. After gaining a small amount of strength stats and soul power, the avatar quickly realized, these low-tier mobs don't give me any meaningful growth anymore. Looking out across the desolate wasteland ahead, the skeletal avatar made a decision. I need to push deeper into the land of the dead. His blue eyes flashed in the darkness as he began advancing toward higher-level zones. Meanwhile, Fang Zhou realized that the battle between his avatar and the boss had taken up way too much time while he was meditating. He opened his eyes and panted heavily. Bai Xiaolian hurried over to support him when she saw him swaying. Did you get hurt during meditation? Fang Zhou quickly figured it out. The injuries my avatar took in the boss fight transferred back to my real body. He told himself to be more careful next time and waved a hand to reassure Bai Xiaolian. I'm fine. Right at that moment, Yi Fan shouted out loudly, Fang Zhou. Yi Fan complained that the summoned skeletons could no longer hold him back. The red-haired guy burst out in emerald energy, broke free from the binding and lunged forward. Have a fair fight with me. Fang Zhou instantly used bone shackles. Chains appeared and bound the opponent tightly. Bound tight by the magical chains, Yi Fan groaned in pain. He immediately protested. This match isn't fair. You used a skill I've never seen before. Fang Zhou replied calmly, come back when you've saved up enough contribution points. The onlookers started getting curious. Did Fang Zhou invent the bone shackles skill all by himself? Meanwhile, Yi Fan was left tied up, calling out to the crowd for help. Fang Zhou walked alone down the stairs as dusk settled. Realizing today was Friday, Fang Zhou reflected on the past few days. He had been so busy building up his strength that he didn't even have time to rest. Time to go home. He walked toward the resource exchange building. Here, Fang Zhou traded 10 contribution points for 100,000 Lixia currency. The receptionist reminded him that contribution points were very hard to earn, but Fang Zhou stood firm. I need money urgently right now. The receptionist handed him a suitcase full of cash. If you need to trade again next time, you can reach out to me. Holding the suitcase of cash, Fang Zhou thought of the kids back home. This money will definitely make the kids' lives a bit better. Fang Zhou returned to Yunduo Orphanage. The children were playing happily in the courtyard. Sister Ruru stood watching the energetic kids, wondering internally how many of them would successfully awaken abilities in the future. Right then, Fang Zhou called out, Sister Nuru. Fang Zhou smiled as he walked over, carrying bags of food in his hands. The kids immediately swarmed over with joy. Big bro Fang Zhou, are there good snacks? Fang Zhou smiled reassuringly, enough for everyone, don't worry. Sister Nuru asked about Fang Zhou's awakening test results. Fang Zhou answered honestly, I awakened as a necromancer. Sister Nuru gently comforted him. As long as the awakening is successful, that's what matters. The class doesn't matter. The nearby kids overheard the conversation. One kid said in fear, "Necromancer sounds so scary." Another chimed in excitedly, "Skeletons sound cool though." To cheer the kids up, Fang Zhou summoned two weak little skeletons. The kids immediately got excited and started playing with them, even using a skeleton skull as a ball to toss back and forth. Afterward, Fang Zhou handed the suitcase to Sister Nuru. "Give this to the director." But right at that moment, Fang Zhou and Sister Nuru simultaneously sensed an unusual presence. A shady-looking man wearing a gold chain walked up with a sneer. "Am I interrupting you guys?" Outside Yunduo Orphanage, a group of shady thugs had gathered. You could tell at a glance they meant no good. Sister Nuru stepped forward. "Why are you guys here so early? We clearly agreed you wouldn't come for a few more days." The thug shoved Sister Nuru hard to the ground. "No one is allowed to delay Tiger Claw Gang's debt payments." Standing over her, he roared angrily, "Today is the final deadline. If you don't pay up right now, the orphanage land used as collateral belongs to our gang." The thug laughed loudly. A little girl quietly ran over to Sister Nuru's side. Suddenly, the little girl lunged at the thug. "I'm the #1 troublemaker in the world. I'll protect Sister Nuru." The thug angrily moved to kick the little girl. Sister Nuru screamed in panic, "Zinxing." But before his foot could touch the little girl, Fang Zhou's skeletal avatar suddenly lunged forward and blocked right in front of her. The thug staggered back in panic, unable to believe his kick had been blocked by a summoned skeleton. Fang Zhou stepped up, patted the little girl's head to comfort her, and said coldly, "Apologize to the kid right now, or else you guys will face the consequences." A lackey whispered in the boss's ear, "Boss, this guy is just a necromancer." A fierce-looking martial artist named Lu immediately flared his aura and threw a punch, directly crushing the skeletal avatar to pieces in a single blow. "Trash, just a garbage class and you're acting tough." Fang Zhou didn't even blink, looking at the opponent calmly. "Is this guy a professional?" Walking beside Sister Nuru, Fang Zhou asked, "Who are these people?" Sister Nuru explained that they were from Tiger Claw Training Equipment Company, who originally came under the guise of selling training gear to the kids. In a flashback, the kids were seen using training equipment. Sister Nuru recounted that she and the director had to borrow money to buy the equipment early because they didn't want the kids to fall behind. But later they realized the company's entire business model was just a front for an illegal usury loan shark ring. Compound interest made the debt balloon to a point where it was impossible to repay. Sister Nuru bit her lip anxiously. Fang Zhou flared up in anger. "Why did you hide such a big thing from me?" The debt collector stepped forward and pointed straight at Fang Zhou. "Kid, don't meddle in adult business. A poor kid like you definitely couldn't casually have 100,000 Licia on hand." Before he even finished speaking, Fang Zhou hurled the suitcase full of cash right into his face. "Catch!" The thug frantically grabbed the suitcase out of midair. Fang Zhou stepped forward. "Here is 100,000, take the money and get lost." Sister Nuru was completely dumbfounded. She had no idea where Fang Zhou got such a huge sum of money. The thug opened the suitcase to check. "Real cash." He immediately called the boss over to verify. "Boss, look at this." The boss tossed the suitcase right back onto the ground. "Shut your mouths, all of you." He gritted his teeth and admitted, "My boss wants the orphanage land itself. 100,000 is just pocket change." He pointed his weapon straight at Fang Zhou. Fang Zhou sneered, "The debt has been paid in full. What else do you want?" The boss held up 5 fingers in front of Fang Zhou. "Delayed payment has driven the total up to 500,000. Sister Nuru panicked. 500,000. But Fang Zhou remained calm, quickly realizing these people never intended to take the money in the first place. They just wanted to cause trouble. The boss bluntly admitted, "So what if we did? Why do you think a bunch of orphans are allowed to occupy land with such a prime location?" The Tiger Claw gang members swarmed forward together, weapons in hand, preparing to forcibly seize the orphanage land. Fang Zhou just smiled coldly. "Want to use numbers to bully people?" He casually summoned a crowd of skeletons. A gloomy aura instantly blanketed the courtyard, as the blonde thug started breaking out in cold sweat. A squad of armored skeletal warriors appeared in unison before Fang Zhou. Behind him, a gigantic skeletal warrior stood tall like a mountain. Fang Zhou said calmly, "Face the consequences." A skeleton closed in right beside the blonde thug, startling him. The blonde thug tried to put on a tough front. "Necromancer is the weakest class. Anyone can crush a skeleton summoned by a rookie." The thugs rushed into the orphanage grounds, cursing as they charged. "Get out of the way, kids scram." A little girl curled up on the ground in fear. "Save me." Fang Zhou finally lost patience as dark aura surged around him. "Scatter them." The thugs laughed, thinking this would be an easy win. They charged headlong into the skeleton formation. One thug swung a spiked mace with all his might, smashing it into a skeletal warrior. But the skeletal warrior's eye sockets merely flared with blue fire. It took absolutely zero damage. Right after that, the skeletal warrior swung its great blade. Swish! The thug was sent flying like a ragdoll. Blood splattered everywhere. The thug screamed in agony as his hand was severed. He was completely terrified by the skeleton's terrifying power. One skeletal warrior even gently reached out to cover a child's eyes so they wouldn't have to look at the bloody sight. Observing from outside, the mace-wielding thug couldn't understand. He's just a student, why are the summoned skeletons this strong? Figuring that necromancers had frail bodies and couldn't engage in close combat, he lunged forward, unleashing a full-power strike intended to crush Fang Zhou's bones. Sister Nuru screamed in panic, "Fang Zhou, watch out," but Fang Zhou didn't even bother moving. Boom, the blow landed with a massive explosion, but the entire attack was blocked dead by a transparent bone shield. The thug widened his eyes. No way, his strongest attack didn't even leave a scratch. Fang Zhou didn't stop, raising his hand. Bone shackles. Green magical bone chains instantly appeared, binding the thug tightly in midair. Fang Zhou pulled hard. The thug was slammed face-first straight into the stone ground. He coughed up blood as it poured from his mouth. This time he finally understood. The student in front of him was definitely not an ordinary person. Bound tightly by bone shackles, the thug still thrashed wildly on the ground. "I'll kill you." Before he could finish his sentence, two gigantic skeletal avatars appeared behind him. Two massive saws locked tightly around his neck. Fang Zhou stood atop his opponent, his blue eyes glowing and dark aura radiating ceaselessly. He issued a cold ultimatum: kneel and apologize or else.